The James City County Board of Supervisors to order for a purpose of work session. Mr. Stevens, please call the roll.
Mr. Hippel? Here. Ms. Larson?
Here.
Ms. Sadler?
Here.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Here. Okay. We are going to, under board discussions, ask for closed session. The first will be the discussion of plans related to the security of any governmental facility, building, or structure, or the safety of persons using such facility, building, or structure pursuant to Section 2.3711A19 of the Code of Virginia. 2.2-3711A19. Okay, got the numbers right? Yes, sir. Good, thank you. And then we have a second one, which was added, is discussion concerning a prospective business or industry where no previous announcement has been made pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A5 of the Code of Virginia. And I'll look for a motion. So moved.
So moved.
All right.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler? Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye. Motion carries. We are in closed session. I gotta get We'll call back to order. I will look for a motion to certify that we only spoke about those things that we...
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Here's your... Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Ms. Larson?
Here. Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlynn?
Aye.
Mr. Rice?
Aye. Okay, we are back in open session. I'll recess the Board of Supervisors while we move over to the Board of Directors for JCSA.
And I will call to order this meeting of the James City Service Authority Board of Directors for a regular meeting. Mr. Powell, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Eisenhower.
Here.
Mr. McGlennon.
Here.
Mr. Hippel.
Here.
Ms. Larson.
Here.
Ms. Sadler.
Here. Any presentations today?
No, ma'am.
Any public comment?
No.
Consent calendar is minutes adoption.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any public hearings
No, ma'am.
or considerations? Board requests and directives.
Just I wanted to thank you for taking the time to update me on what was going on with JCSA recently. I appreciate
It
it.
was very,
a lot
very
going on.
informative. Yeah, it was great. We do appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
Anyone?
Well, I'm really anticipating this.
Me too. Right.
Better make it good.
Right.
General Manager's update, Mr. Powell.
Just one item I did want to let the board know. The meter register replacement project that we've discussed previously is coming to an end. There are less than 400 meters left to be, meter registers left to be replaced. They should be completed by next week.
Very good.
And then we will begin the process of planning for monthly
Replacing the
billing.
old one. Person's good.
So would you know if you'd had a meter replacement?
You probably wouldn't. The water did not need to be turned off while this took place. So no, it's entirely possible that you wouldn't even know.
Okay.
Very good.
Wow.
And then we will then go to the process of trying to set this up on a monthly basis.
That's correct.
How long do you expect that to take?
I think that we're probably looking at a 6 to 9 month process
Okay.
before we start monthly billing.
Okay.
That's my guess at this point.
And then we'll do some advertisement.
Oh yeah, there'll be some public information. Absolutely.
All right.
Very good. Okay. Well, I'll look for a motion to adjourn 4 p.m. October 22nd, 2019 for a regular meeting.
So moved.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember, that's over.
Okay. And we'll call the Board of Supervisors back into order for the rest of the work session. And I guess we are going to start with our 911 Center Consolidation discussion with Chief Ashes. There we go.
Oh, and the chief of police.
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know they were talking and both
Yeah.
aware of what's going on.
Happy to have you all.
Thank you. He'll pass these out, copies.
I wasn't sure if I missed a key on it. I mean, I guess.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I think I bingo.
Yeah.
So we gave you, there's a copy of the full draft of the one that's included in the presentation that you've seen, just in case you want to look at anything any closer.
Mr. Stevens, you want to start or you want to just get started? I think I'll let you get started, Chief. You know, we started this. I guess I will open it up with just some comments. There was a report done a year ago that talked about consolidation. There was some brief discussion that really didn't get to the board level. When I came here, Chief Ash had mentioned it pretty early on that was something we ought to talk about. Bill Porter had mentioned it to me, quite frankly, before his leaving. But what came around is that sometime last fall, there was a discussion about the police RMS. You're going to hear about CAD and police RMS. The CAD system, we've talked about needing to upgrade that software in the coming years. The RMS vendor last year had said something to the effect of theirs wasn't going to be enhanced or future enhancements or something, which led us to believe, or at least me, that software was going to need to be enhanced in the next period of time, 3 to 5 years maybe, which if we were going to get into this spending money, I thought it was prudent for us to talk about the best way to provide the service, whether it's here or in a consolidated center. And so we spent a lot of time and effort talking to dispatchers, asking for their opinion, talking to our police and firefighters in terms of email and asking their opinion. We've had a lot of opinion. We've talked with the chief and his staff, both in police and fire. This chart is terribly confusing, but it was our best start at trying to put this complicated topic into one place. And we have said to our employees, whatever we do, we want to make sure we look after you the best we can. If we consolidate, we want to make sure we've got you as whole as you can be, meaning if you were to become York County employees. If you stay here, we still want to make sure that we haven't mistreated you as part of this evaluation. And I will tell you from where I sit as a county administrator. We met with all shifts. Chief Ash and I did in early August. It was very emotional, and it has been for them, and I apologize for that. But their input has been really good and very helpful. And we met with them again a week ago, and sometimes in between, and all of those meetings have been very professional. So it's not a reflection on their job performance at all. It was just making sure we provide the best service to the community. And I think Chief Ash can maybe carry us from there.
So just kind of an overview of a couple things we're going to talk about. First, I want to talk about, so what are the challenges facing? You've heard from police and fire over the last few years about challenges facing both of those services. What are some of the challenges facing the Emergency Communications Center? And then some of the proposed solutions that Mr. Stevens just mentioned that we've been evaluating. So the first is staffing. You've heard me in previous presentations talk about, those presentations were driven really by technology. We talked about the most important component is our folks and staffing. So we have 28 authorized positions. Today, 4 of those are vacant. One of those is Emergency Communications Manager, who runs the Daily Operations Center. That's a vacancy. We currently have Assistant Chief filling that role. And then the other 3 are Emergency Communications Officers. Those are the folks that work on the floor on shift work. So some of the challenges we've had over time is a limited number of viable applicants, and that's really not unique just to us or even just to the emergency communications position, but it has impacted us getting our vacancies filled in. So we'll see a number of applicants. Many of them are filling out applications because they're required to fill out a certain number of applications. So we really get that pool narrowed down to who shows up to our information sessions, comes and takes our critical testing that we take. We really get down to a limited number of folks. Our background check eliminates a pretty high percentage, both in fire, police, and in emergency communications, which we feel strongly about.
What would be something on a background check that would get you?
Yeah, so a lot of times it's undetected crimes. It may be some criminal history they have. We do polygraph our folks,
Okay.
And sometimes we found information in there that either they weren't truthful in application or those types of things. Could be drug use, could be any type of thing that really. There are some requirements for them to meet VSIN, which is really driven by police requirements, and so we have all those figured into our background disqualifiers.
Okay.
So with a limited number of viable applicants, there's been times where we couldn't fill all of our vacancies, and other times we've been able to. But then we reached a point where we have significant turnover during our training process. And again, that's not unique to James City County Emergency Communications. That's really an industry-wide challenge. Most often that's job fit. That it's a very difficult position. Our folks that do that do it very well, and it's very hard. It's a very hard skill set. It's a very hard emotional position to be in. So we get some pretty significant turnover during our training process. And we'll show you there, if you look at the graph or the chart at the bottom, I want to show you that really the biggest turnover occurs during that introductory period. So that's during their initial training, or maybe they get out of the in-house academy and they've gone to work on shift. And that's usually when they start to take those difficult calls and things like that, or they find out they're not able to keep up with the pace of calls within the center. So it's not folks leaving after 10 or 12 years. Most often our turnover is occurring in that initial introductory period. So all that together has us operating at minimum staffing levels. And we'll show you a graph in a second to show you that we're better than where we were, but we're still not quite at our goal. So when we say minimum staffing levels, the minimum we operate now with is 4 in the center. So that's 2 call takers, a police dispatcher, and a fire dispatcher. One of those is the supervisor or the acting supervisor for the night. We really have been wanting to move to a minimum of 5 people on duty so that the supervisor or acting supervisor is able to take just a slight step back. They still may have to answer the radio sometime or answer a 911 call, but they're able to maintain the situational awareness within the center. So far, we've not been able to do that because of our staffing levels without some significant overtime cost or holding mandatory. So again, our staffing levels have improved from where they were a few years ago, but they're still below our goal. So the next chart we have there, the graph shows you, I know that's kind of confusing. You've probably seen some of these from us before, and this is sort of how we track our staffing. But the blue is our qualified or released trained dispatchers working on shift. The yellow are times where our trainees. The dark blue line at the top is the authorized positions, not total, but authorized positions for shift. And the green line is kind of where we really want to be in order to try to get to 5 people working without significant overtime and allows people to be off, those types of things. So you'll see that this is over about the past 5 fiscal years. You'll see we took a significant dip there in the fall of 15 and have been on an increase since then with a few dips. But so overall, our staffing has improved from where it was in the fall of 15. but still not where we would like to be. We went through a period of time there where we couldn't even authorize folks to be off on leave because we were truly at bare minimum number. So that has improved, and I think you'll hear from our folks that that has improved. So we're moving in the right direction. We're just still not quite where we'd like to be. So we know that to do that, we need to address our turnover or additional positions, those ideas that we're evaluating to how to get past that. The next challenge we're facing is our connection to our partners. So you've heard us talk before about a lot of mutual aid or automatic aid that we run between the city of Williamsburg and York County, particularly mostly on fire and EMS side, although there is some use of mutual aid on the police side. So today we have a third-party connection. It's a company called TELUS that connects our dissimilar CAD system. So the James City County CAD system with the York, Poquoson, Williamsburg CAD system. And then we're able to transfer calls, or transfer the requests over for those automatic aid units, and we're able to see their unit status. So what trucks are available so that our unit recommendations through the dispatching can select the right unit and quickly process that call. The issue we've had is really the reliability in that connection. We've had a variety of challenges with that, of incorrect unit statuses. Sometimes the call doesn't actually transfer through that system. And when we do that, there's an associated delay. Sometimes it takes a minute to realize that the call hasn't gone through. You're trying to work through unit status to get what unit's actually available. That's now done on a phone call. We still back up the CAD to CAD software with a phone call. So our folks are still calling over to the York, Poquoson, Williamsburg Center to verify, hey, did you get the message? What's the unit status, to make sure we have them on the way. There's times where that delay is 30 or 45 seconds, and there's been some times, again here recently, where it took as much as from the time the person called until we got the right units dispatched was almost 6 minutes. And that's the going back and forth. And again, it's not a people error. It's the technology is not helping you. I used an example the other day. Pretend we're looking at two different screens and there's a wall built between us. What you see is your reality and you believe it 100%. What's on the other side of the wall is their reality and they believe it 100%. Mm-hmm. And the actuality is it's very difficult to get coordinated to the right unit. So what you see at the bottom there is sort of how a call comes in, and this would be you pick up your landline within James City County or a cell phone call within James City that comes to the James City County Center. The phone call gets received. There's a brief period of time before you get the CAD started. You're starting to enter information. During that time, the call taker is asking you a series of questions. They'll finish the call to a point where it can be sent over to police or fire to get dispatched. And we shoot for that to be done within 60 seconds. Obviously, sometimes it takes a while to calm the caller down or get the right information so you know what code to choose, and is it police, fire, or is it actually both? So that time varies, but we shoot for that to be in about 60 seconds. Then the call gets dispatched. In the case of fire department, we like to get dressed and get out the door between 60 and 90 seconds, depending if it's day or night. And then we start that travel time where they're driving to the call. What we see happen with when the unit statuses are off or that delay in that request is at that point where it says dispatched, that's the trigger point now where that mutual aid or automatic aid request goes over to our partner. So that process starts for them in getting those units notified, dispatched, notified. They have a time to get dressed and get on the road. So when we talk about the delay, that's the piece we're referring to. And second, we'll talk about wireless calls, but while we have that up, we'll just show you that when the wireless call comes in, if it's misrouted to the wrong center, there's a piece in the front that could be delayed. We'll talk a little bit more about those 911 calls and kind of how that process works. So wireless 911 call transfers. So we have so many intermeshed geographic boundaries. Obviously, we're populated near those boundaries with City of Williamsburg and York County. So really the limitation is in our current cell technology. So a cell phone call now by FCC guidelines has to be routed to, if you dial 911 from a cell phone, it has to be routed within 6 seconds. The GPS location isn't available from somewhere between 15 to say 30 seconds, most times somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 seconds. So they can't route the cell call today based on the GPS location of your phone because the call routing has already occurred before the GPS location is available. So in order to fix that, you would either have to delay the 911 call being routed until the location's available, or the GPS location has to be available within 5 seconds, less than 6 seconds to be routed. So today, all wireless cell phone call routing is done at the wireless carrier's cell tower equipment. So it's completely out of the control of any 911 center of to how those can get routed. It's completely on the wireless callers. APCO, NENA, which are both public safety communications organizations, International Association of Chief of Police, International Fire Chiefs, all have working groups where they've been trying to work on this with the FCC and with cell carriers, some all the way back to 2004, trying to solve those misroutings. Again, not a problem unique to us. It occurs pretty much in every 911 center. I think the issue we see it more today is simply because of the intermesh boundaries between York and Williamsburg. So if you look at the chart there, the very bottom is the York, Pocosa, and Williamsburg. Those are transfers to James City County and transfers from James City County. And you can see that while we do have that same interaction with others, it's the highest with those, again, because the population is really centered around those. So over 200 calls a month as an average. We may see months that are higher than that. We may see months lower than that, but kind of on the average, 235 calls. So that can cause a delay when that was received in the wrong location. They're starting to ask information from the caller, recognize it, then have to transfer it to the appropriate center. And sometimes that you start asking some of those same questions over again. Again, not all 235 of those are critical life emergency right this minute. It could be someone calling to tell you, Brian, there's a dog barking or some other thing that may be a less emergent call, but there's still a call that's misrouted. And with that is the next generation 911. You may have heard something about that, but it's essentially the move from 50-year-old copper telephone wires being offered from Verizon. Verizon no longer offering the 911 service. And it's a move to an IP cloud-based solution. There's some thoughts out there that would solve the wireless call routing. But today, because all the wireless call routing is occurring in the cell tower equipment owned by the cell carriers, NextGen 911 will not solve the wireless misrouting. What it will allow is the transmission of GPS locations. Once that technology has caught up to allow it to transfer, we will see that. So the NextGen 911 move today is being funded as the one-time cost. The state intends to fund that, and they will fund the additional cost. It's about double a monthly service. They're going to fund that for the first 24 months, and they'll be responsible to James City County to pick up that additional cost after the first 24 months. So the next thing we face us, as Mr. Stevens alluded to, is some technology upgrades. So our CAD, or computer-aided dispatch system, we switched to our current system in 2003. We still maintain the data from our old system in a separate location that can be accessed for cold cases or any previous information we need out of there. Our current vendor has merged with other vendors. They changed names a couple times, and last fall, the company became Central Square. Essentially, it bought up several different companies together, and they're no longer advertising our product as their flagship. So their intention is to still support it. So it's not going away today or going away maybe even the next 3 to 5 years. But what they have told us is they're not going to do any of the upgrades, the enhancements. Essentially, what you have today is kind of what you'll have. They'll continue to support that and maintain things to keep that operational, but you won't get anything new, the new enhancements out of it. The police records management system, which is the same vendor as our computer-aided dispatch system. Again, same situation. They've stopped some of the rewrites of a few of the systems that they had planned to do with the merger. But again, we probably have 3 to 5 years before that really needs to be upgraded. But we know we need to start that process early. Our phone system, our call handling equipment is currently shared. We share that with York County, and that allows us to have the backup rollover, and as well as if our center needed to go down and we move there or vice versa. And we'll be working on that next generation 911 migration later this year into early next year. Regional radio system life cycle. We were here a couple years ago and talked about our next 5-year plan to upgrade the system with including the connection with the City of Suffolk and Isle of Wight system. And that process is ongoing. They've installed some of that equipment, and we'll be getting ready to, later this year, first of next year, install the new radio console equipment in our 911 center. And then sort of an evaluation of what are the other redundancy things we need to do. Recently, we had to relocate to York County for a couple days, so a generator issue. So what are the other options? Does that need to be a second generator? Does a different first generator? Is there a larger bank of battery backups, those types of things that we need to work through to make sure we have the right redundancy in place. So we looked at solutions. How do we address these challenges that we've been facing for a while? So option one is that we've evaluated is to maintain a standalone ECC, Emergency Communications Center here in James City County. We're going to continue to focus on addressing our staffing and turnover. We know that the CAD, RMS, and other technology is still going to need to be upgraded. Option two was to, again, maintain our center here in James City County, but share a CAD system with the York, Pocosa, and Williamsburg Center. Where today we're sharing radio equipment and sharing 911 call handle equipment. We have an opportunity to share CAD with them as well. We still need to continue to focus on addressing staffing and turnover. That shared system would improve the automatic aid responses, so we wouldn't have that third-party vendor that we haven't had the reliability with that connection. And increase situational awareness for our dispatchers and responders, so we would be able to see the status and location of York County or Williamsburg fire or police units that today we can't see. But we still need to continue our evaluation on the connection for the police RMS system. How does CAD and police RMS? If those are the same vendor, they're pretty seamless. If they're different vendors, it does require an interface to make those work. So we want to evaluate to make sure that's meeting the police chief's needs and for folks within the police department. And then the third option was to consolidate with the York, Pocosa, and Williamsburg Center. We did the feasibility study last year that said, yes, it's feasible. Didn't necessarily say it's the right thing or the wrong thing, but yes, it was feasible. So we've been going through the process over the last 6 or 7 weeks of really kind of digging through the criteria chart that we handed out earlier, trying to really evaluate what are the points that we need to evaluate and how do we figure out, is it better, worse, stays the same? And I think you'll see from your chart, and we have this broken down into really 3 slides, is there's some disagreement. So what you see on the left-hand side is kind of the best information that Mr. Stevens and I had to put together what color we thought. What you see on the right-hand side is feedback from the Emergency Communications Center staff or the police department staff. You'll see there's areas where we agree on the colors. There's areas that we disagree. There's a lot of areas that are multicolored, and those are, we think it could be green, we think it could be yellow, maybe it falls somewhere in between. Maybe we're not sure because we don't have enough information yet. But we really want to look at how do the options address the challenges that we just reviewed. The bottom there is what's the service to the citizens. So at the end of the day, if the citizen dials 911, what happens? Whether that's from a landline or from a wireless line. Backup is important, obviously, making sure that those calls are routed somewhere if we needed to go down for some reason. And then there's other services we provide, like emergency medical dispatch, that are given pre-arrival instructions for CPR or first aid over the phone. We want to make sure we're continuing to provide all those services. The next section was a service to our internal customers. One of those mentioned there is control of emergency communications, the decision making. Then service to police, service to fire. You'll see some blanks there that we still need to fill in for Sheriff's Office, Animal Control, James City Service Authority. And we see social services, general services, because we do provide some after hours on-call services for them or calling out their on-call people. Again, there's areas where we agreed, there's areas where we disagreed, and there's a lot of areas that are still unknown, the multicolors there. And the last section was on the impacts to our staff. As Mr. Stephen alluded earlier, we won't want to mistreat them. If they were to become York County employees, it's very important to us that they were being made whole. So we tried to go through the different criteria we could think of that affect them: pay, benefits, tuition assistance, career ladders, familiarization with the area, opportunities for promotion. And then the last category being cost. So we went through all those. I would say that we spent a lot of time trying to get the right answers. Some of them, it's a very complicated, it's a very involved process. Some of those we're pretty sure about. Some of those we think we know. And there's some that we just don't know the answer to yet. So if we're not at the point where I think we could summarize, there's enough in this column that equals green, there's enough in this column that equals yellow. I think we're still kind of a little bit all over the place on evaluating those. So then we kind of said, what's the next steps of all that? So if you can process all those colors that are on that chart, what's the next step? So we went back to those 3 options. Number 1 is maintain the standalone center and just keep doing what we're doing. We don't feel like that's really an option, really the right option. So we don't recommend doing that. We'll continue to have those same delays. We continue to work on staffing and addressing those. So we don't recommend that option. Option 2, maintain our center here in James City County, but explore sharing the CAD system with the York, Pecos, and Williamsburg. So we believe it'll improve a high percentage of those delays in call transfer and automatic aid requests, situational awareness for the unit status, and see where those units are, what their availability is. We believe it'll fix a high percentage of those. We still need to continue improving staffing and turnover. We believe staying here, we need to upgrade the emergency communications manager position, upgrade the salary for that position, and we'd be looking to add an additional 3 to 5 positions. Our best guess on price is somewhere around $370,000 to do that. And then we need to address some of those building improvements, things we talked about, like the bank of batteries or generators or whatever those shake out to be. And we believe that's another about $200,000 is probably a one-time cost for now to get the redundancy we need, make sure we have addressed the staffing we need, get the right professionals running that section, our department. And then third option, to consolidate York, Pecos, and Williamsburg. We believe before we could do that, we need a lot of further investigation into the criteria chart, try to filter out those colors and see what's really the right answers to all those. We know that we need to hold a series of public meetings to get citizen input on the issue. That's probably more than one public meeting. And then there's consideration we probably may need some outside assistance to help really filter through some of the criteria in the chart and then all the technical requirements when you get all the way down to which wires plug together and which ones don't. There's obviously a lot of information there. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces to that puzzle. So that's kind of where we think we need to do if option 3 was to be pursued. So then I'll take any questions you have or anything Mr. Stevens wants to add. Mr. Stevens, please.
No, I think the chief covered it pretty well. Really are trying to look for some direction from the board on where you'd like us to go. Continue the consolidation discussion does take some more effort and put some folks out there for a while. We, at least talking with Chief Ash, he and I believe some option 2, and again, it wouldn't commit us to Motorola CAD, but that's at least a strong contender. If you do that, it gets rid of that delay in dispatching fire and EMS. So that being the benefit to the community is one of the top priorities we talked about. The second was service to our benefit to our first responders, police and fire. So it will be balancing those through that process to make sure we don't miss something. But that option 2 solves a significant part of our concern with delayed response. Putting us all on the same road, I think we need to talk about some more to figure out if it's beneficial or not. I think there's some areas you do a little better. I think some areas don't do as well. And to the chief's point, I think we'd have to talk about that to really make sure we have good information for you.
So with option 2, a shared CAD is switching to Motorola?
Today, right. So York, Pecos, Williamsburg uses Motorola today. We've been using that third-party interface for, I guess, about 5, almost 6 years now.
Okay.
With those reliability checks.
So with option 2, is there the potential of, and talking with Mr. Stevens, I understand it would be a long process, maybe a year, I think you said it, looking at, evaluating it, studying it. While we're studying Motorola, is the potential there for us to add other vendors in as well so that we're not locked into that? Because quite frankly, after a year of just studying Motorola, at the end of that year, odds are it's going to be Motorola. And if that's what we need to do, then that's what we need to do. But I would like to see us be at least open to other vendors along the way so that we can make the best possible choice in the, for the long term without it just being focused on one system.
Sure.
Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I believe the evaluation would be to look at the options that are out there that solve police needs, fire needs, and also that component being the connection, whether that's done through a third party or done because it's the same shared software. I think we would have to consider that connection between the 2 CAD systems. So if it's Motorola, then there is no third party connection. If it's Brad Reinheimer CAD, then there's a third party connection that also has to be factored in for cost and reliability and all those things.
Is that the interface that you were talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the interface. So what happens to to call history. I'm particularly concerned about that, especially for our police officers.
Sure.
So how is that addressed in this process?
So in 2003, when we switched to our current vendor, we did not convert data. We still maintain that in a separate system that we can go back and pull information from. I think every year we had a conversation recently with Chief Reinheimer about really how much of the 15-year call history do you really need? Ideally, you'd have all of it, but there's some period where every day you move forward, there's a little bit less value in some of that call history. You're really probably looking the last 2 to 3 years that's really important, or particular really high important call types or certain call history.
Depending on what that is.
Correct.
Okay.
There is a possibility to do data conversion. The issue there is it's typically very expensive, and you may spend a lot of money and not get reliable, good data. Or do all the fields line up correctly to transfer over? But it's something that we're certainly would be part of that evaluation process is, do we convert all 15 years? Do we convert only 2 years? Do we have somebody manually sit down and enter the really important calls? I don't know what that would look like, but that has to be a consideration.
Okay. So that would be all part of this year-long
Yes, ma'am.
study of how we put all this together.
Absolutely.
So Chief Reinheimer, anything to add? I don't want to cut him out.
No,
Do you have anything to add to that?
I think Ryan answered that very well, and that is a major concern for us. That was one of the things that, probably the thing we're most concerned about with this, is loss of that call history. And we don't know. We don't know what sort of interface there may be that might work depending on the vendor for CAD versus the vendor for RMS. So those are questions we really can't answer right now, but absolutely that'll be something that I'll be fighting as hard as I can.
One of the things we figured out is, does the call history need to be converted and be in the system, or can the call history be maintained in a separate database that's still searchable from within the 911 center or police units automatically? When you run a name through the system, it searches all of that. So is it worth the value of conversion, or is there another option? And those are the things we need to weigh out in that evaluation.
So can I ask about the salary number that you provided here? You said about $350,000 or so additional salary. Is that a kind of net number or gross in the sense that it sounds as if because of turnover in the department, you're probably having some savings in the salaries during the year anyway?
Absolutely.
And that this might
Yes. So
just
that
mean
was,
that you're not going to be spending some of that or returning some of that salary money.
you're exactly right. I believe if I would have to run the numbers for sure and confirm with finance, but I believe if we upgraded the salary position or even added positions right now today, there's probably enough salary savings to cover that. Mm-hmm. This number would be, if we were looking at a future budget year, you were upgrading the manager's position salary and adding somewhere between 3 and 5 positions, that would be a figure we would add to the budget to cover that. But yes, year one or the remaining of this year, I believe we would have salary savings to cover that.
And Mr. McGlynn, part of our conversation on additional positions, we have folks that are a trainer, but they're a dispatcher and a trainer. It's not their job to be our trainer or our recruiter. It was trying to do some of those things that would make folks more focused in this area and maybe have better luck with that initial training, getting people better screened and through, and a better going out and look for people, right? Sending somebody that can really be looking for applicants, so we're not just waiting for people to find us. So it was long-term, a true increase. Short-term, your point is right. There's enough salary savings there today to cover anything short-term.
I think there's 3 things probably that we ought to look at with this whole thing. And one is staffing, and one's fire EMS, and one's police, and they're all put together. Being with the volunteers and knowing a lot of the fire, police, and all that, you get a lot of calls. And I think as far as our staffing, as far as the 911 center, I think that needs to be a dedicated position of leadership position within the county, and that would be, of course, that would be on his side, not your side. I think that fire should do fire, police does police, and dispatch does dispatch. They all join together, work hand in hand. But I think blending some of it sometimes can and I think it's caused a little bit what I'm seeing from the outside in the dispatch center. I think we need to have someone running the dispatch center that is dedicated and trained in nothing but dispatch. And you're going to pay $100,000 plus for that position. We already know that. We know where we're at, and we know what we've been missing. So, and then that position needs an assistant under it, whatever that title would be. And then the other positions underneath that to get us up to the manpower that we need to, take care of the dispatch center. That being one of our three legs to the stool, because we're already at 4 positions missing right now.
So are you talking about in addition to what he's requested?
It'd be part of what that
Okay.
is.
5 number.
Yeah.
Yes, they're in that 3 to 5.
But we've got to look at, we're probably gonna, we're gonna have to bite that bullet to get that caliber of person into that position. And I think once you do that, your turnover is gonna be less. Because, in any company, as an owner, that if people are leaving, they're leaving for a reason, but it's your job to fix that reason. It may be wage, it may be personalities, it may be the way the company runs. You always look at yourself and go, how would I fix this as a business? And I'm looking at it strictly as a business and how I would look at fixing dispatch. Also with that, we're going to have some savings because of overtime. So if we get it staffed up just like we did with fire, we went ahead and saw we were losing people and saw we were spending a lot of money in overtime, and we ended up saving money in the long run by hiring more people, which was a very smart move. Good move all the way around on that one. The CAD system, we've got to make sure that it fits. One system fits. I don't know how to do that. That's y'all's job. But we need to make sure that you get everything you need and you get everything you need, and dispatch can get it out to you quickly. I think it's something that may end up being a shared system with York County, not staff, but the system itself. So if something goes over to York County, because our lines, as y'all know well, how our lines cross over, and you're in York County, and 3 seconds later you're back in James City, and you really didn't even know you left James City. I think those 2 systems were so close, and that'll tie into Williamsburg and all, since they're part of the York County system. I think that would help. I think option 2 is going to be our probably our best option. Is I'm not leaning towards option 3 because the savings and what we could do is not going to give us, I think, what we need. And y'all with dispatch and fire and EMS, police and all that, it's all one big family. They know each other. They know what's going on in each other's lives. They know what troubles and problems and heartaches they can get into while they're on the scene protecting us and keeping us safe. And so it's a family within a family of James City County. And until you're in that group, you really don't understand it as much as as these men and women that give everything for us to keep us healthy and happy and moving forward. So that's just a few of mine. I'm gonna let the rest of the board members speak a little bit. Might come back.
Thank you.
Glad to.
So what do we do? We do this investigation, and then how do we know that York isn't going to change up their system? So we find a system that interfaces. How sure they're going to stay with what they're doing?
So I think that is as far as the interface between dissimilar systems. I believe that's been one of the challenges. If we make a change, something has to tweak in the interface. Then York, because when Williamsburg makes a change, something has to tweak in the interface. Whether that could be as simple as changing the name of a unit, adding a unit. They upgrade to the latest release of the software, and something happens, and we rely on a third party. So a third-party vendor, but we also rely on a Cox communication connection for those. So there's sort of a multi-points of failure in between that, and that's sort of been a thing we've been competing to get.
I think the question sheet too, that was a good explanation for me because I hadn't heard it quite that way of ongoing problems. But if they're upgrading, York is over here, they're on this software, we choose to go to it, what happens when they change? I think was more the question. Why do we think they're going to stay with where they are?
What if we, the 2 boards, get together and put together an SOP? If they do something with this system, if we do something with this system, we've got to connect to both of us. With that the boards come up with an agreement, a resolution, that this is our standard operating procedure by touching this system. So that it doesn't leave y'all out in the cold going, I didn't know they upgraded. Sure.
Right. So
But that would be further down the line once we decide which system we're going to go with.
Sure. So I think, Bizarre, your question is your because Williamsburg is using Motorola CAD today and we purchased our own Motorola CAD, then I believe there would be, if they change, we would change to keep that going.
Okay.
We have an opportunity to share it, where it's not our own separate version. The way their CAD is, you can partition off agencies. So we would be partitioned off, but we would share a lot of the main site license, if you will.
Okay.
But we would still have our own server, our own backup, so and all those things. And again, to Ms. Savage, that's a lot of part of what we would evaluate. But there's an opportunity to truly share a system. So if it's upgraded, it's all upgraded.
And that's, I think, in the recommendations that you put out in front of us, I think that really makes option 2 rise up, because it gives both our folks and the York Coast Williamsburg folks a rationale to work together, because we both benefit financially from having that same system in place. So if they decide that it's not working well for them and they want to evaluate it, then they're probably going to want us to sit down at the table with them, because it'll result in some significant cost savings.
And obviously in this evaluation, we're looking at it from our perspective, but from their side, it also, they gain many of the same things. So the situational awareness of being able to see where fire units and police units are benefits their side of the boundary line as well.
The other question I had, because this is a little bit, when we spoke at one point, you thought it was going to be around $1 million, possibly.
I think if you get into actually putting the centers together, the real thing you share today, you could share the CAD system, and your costs are not terribly different. You could share the police RMS. Those are still future decisions that we'd have a team of employees working on to evaluate what's best of either. But you'd have that option whether we're in the same room or not in the same room. Where you save long-term in the same room is in people. If we have 30 or 35 people here, and I think they have 50 in York, you don't need 85 in one place. You probably need 75. And so those are some things in the backup systems of generators or batteries, things that we wouldn't have to spend if we were consolidated. But again, we didn't put that in there as our primary point of evaluation, because we really talked about service to the community and service to our first responders being what we were looking to improve. And we feel like the shared CAD certainly improves the dispatching piece. What we've got to make sure is that doesn't disadvantage our first responders enough, particularly the police side, of having that data with the RMS and that interface with CAD and those kinds of things.
Okay. So we go with option 2. Once we no longer have the savings realized from the salary, what is the plan moving forward to pay for the increase in the cost?
It'll be part of our budgeting process, and Sharon and I haven't talked in particular about that, but we have not incorporated or assumed those numbers. They would be something we would talk about during the 2-year budgeting process come up, so the chief would be submitting his budget to sort of have it incorporated into that. And then that increase beyond revenue increasing, which we'll expect this year, it just offsets something else. As you know, we're always balancing and trading off a little bit of revenues are here and our expenditures are here, and trying to make sure we're funding those priority things first.
Right.
So it either doesn't leave money in our fund balance that could be there, or another project doesn't get done that might have gotten done that was a $300,000 or $400,000 project, depending.
But we had those basic positions years ago. And so, it's not that we're creating basically a new position. Of course, the more calls and volume that we take, the more people we need, and also the more people that come in, to our, we're going to have to grow just like with schools. It's got to grow with the community as it grows, and wages are going up, and to find that type of individual, we've already seen in the numbers of what it's going to cost to put that person in that position, and we've missed several of them because we couldn't afford it. So we've got to, and doing the same thing the same way is going to give us the same results. So we're going to have to look at it and go, if we're going to keep this dispatch center, then we need to make it a dispatch center and run it like a dispatch center, and it'll keep our employees longer, because then they'll be happy, because there'll be a chance to move up. I'm sure they're sitting in there right now going, what are my chances in James City County? I'm a dispatcher, and I'm a good dispatcher, and that's a needed job, and that's a stressful job, taking all that. But where do I go next, or can I go somewhere next? And I think that's part of, what we're doing with all our employees, is building that ladder of success and trying to create that within our organization.
And I do think to more positions in the future, I think you'll see that in dispatch as you have in police and fire, as our population grows, as our call for service grows. The dispatchers are integral to being part of that process to make sure we respond and get there. And so as population and all that goes up, we will add positions. These 3 to 5 we talk about, I think over the next 2 years, we would get to that and be about where we ought to be for a few years, and then we move beyond that. But it is planning in the budget process to be able to accommodate that.
So over the next year or more, or however long it takes for you to study and evaluate, is that going to be a group of people like from your group and your group and the dispatchers? Are there going to be people coming together that already know how all this works and the changes that need to be made? Are there going to be your folks that are going to be evaluating a lot of this?
I would envision being 911 center staff, fire staff, police staff, our information technology, our IRM group that have to help maintain the servers and part of the systems. And if we're having that conversation about sharing, certainly some folks from York, Pocos, and Williamsburg about how that would come together.
Because I can tell you, I'm not in favor of consolidation at all. I'll just throw that out there. I think we need to keep everyone here, in my personal opinion. But I want to make sure that if I could go with option 2, I just want to make sure that you've got everything that you're needing as far as this call history. That's my biggest concern.
Sure,
right
and
now.
that is, like I said, that's our biggest concern. While a shared CAD is certainly beneficial and solves a lot of the problems with fire and EMS, that does create that concern for us. So that will be the top thing on our priority list to discuss.
And I think it is important for us to give some direction, just to sort of put an end to the kind of multi-directional kind of approach here, and just say that if we feel this way, and I do, that option 2 is the right one to pursue. When I look at this chart, I said from the beginning that I'd really need to see some terrific improvement in situation to feel that we wanted to take that step. So I think that this is telling me that it looks like we have another opportunity to do a change that will help our system without the kind of disruption that would be caused by the consolidation.
Yeah, but I do think too that during the process, if there's roadblocks, that we need to be made aware of those. And
certainly in the process, if you give direction to sort of move towards option 2 today, which is what I'm hearing from you, you're still involved in the process as we go through. We haven't selected the vendor. We haven't gone through those processes. There would be some updates to the board. You'd have some conversations at the end to say, okay, we said Motorola, maybe we're at another vendor. Because I do think, to your point, we ought to be evaluating the vendors that are out there that we believe this is the best option and why. But that's a conversation months away, maybe 6 to 12 months away. But you would still be part of that. So your decision or direction today is not the final decision without the board having some input at a future time.
With that vendor, sometimes we look at a vendor, we can save a few dollars, and then they go out of business in 5 years or sell 3 or 4 times like we're seeing, and then we're out of a vendor. So we may want to, have that, if there's a way we can bet that knowledge. I know it's like a crystal ball, but, there's certain ones that have been around forever that are going to stay. So,
Cook Travel Agency.
Yeah.
I'd like to, Chief, do you have anything that we're missing, anything on police side that, we should be looking at in this process?
No, I think Fire Chief Ash did a great job of summarizing that. My opinion on it right from the start was I don't think it would benefit us to do the consolidated.
Okay.
I didn't know how detrimental it would be, that if it was going to be that much more beneficial for fire, then, what's best for the county as a whole. But I think that option 2, solves a lot of their issues, and then we'll work on solving those issues that it creates for us. And we know it's going to create issues for us. Even if we stuck with option 1, at some point, we're going to need a new CAD, we're going to need a new RMS. And it certainly makes sense to have a shared CAD to resolve their issues, because their issues are real issues. But it does create issues for us. But that's what we'll be looking for in a vendor, and
Right.
whether it's Motorola or another one, what's that interface like with the RMS? Is it the same RMS or a different RMS? And how's that going to communicate? And That's what we'll be looking at very hard in this.
And the call history is something you're going to be looking at no matter which, even if we stay with our same
Correct.
vendor but a different product line, there still has to be some conversion of data to get there. So that's kind of one of those we know we have to deal with in the next 3 to 5 years anyway.
And how about when y'all talk to other chiefs in the same situation or trying to, keep up with technology? Is there anything y'all are seeing that, or is there anything you can share that they're seeing and that might help us in the process?
I think it's frustrating both for fire and police, and you touched on about the vendors. They change names, they get bought out. Now Central Square owns these different. I mean, that's frustrating because we
Yes.
don't know.
Right.
And the ones that they bought out were long-standing companies and been in business for a long time. You just don't know what that business is going to do, and that's frustrating. And this is a big move to make, and that level of confidence will never be real high,
Right.
Because of that. You never know when that's going to happen.
That's right.
Even Motorola, there's always new company. Axon now is getting into the RMS and CAD business, and Motorola, they're pretty new to that business.
Yeah.
It's just hard. It's hard to keep up, and it's hard to know what's coming next. So that's frustrating.
Okay.
Thank you all for your
Well, I
service.
think everybody's had
We
their
appreciate you very much.
had their say, and I will sum it up because I think we've got a consensus of the board for option 2. And I would ask just one quick question: just that on when you are out recruiting folks for this job, what kind of how do you focus? Are people coming out of high school folks, or you want somebody coming out of college? What kind of background and what kind of audience are you targeting for entry level in this position?
Yeah, really, so if you were to walk into one of the shifts in our 911 center and ask that same question, what was your background? You'll see a variety all over the place. It's a question I asked a few years ago to our folks, like, what made you come here and how do we target that? We see folks who maybe had a family member that was in fire or police or something, and that was their interest. Some folks kind of stumbled upon it. Other folks weren't sure they'd like it and then ended up stayed 20 years. And we see some ex-military. We see some right out of high school. We see some out of college that aren't sure what they really want to do with their degree. So we really see all walks of life. We've tried targeting the community colleges, the high school job fairs, the military, folks that are separating from the military. We tried to target for a while folks that were in the military that had a background in communications in the military. And so we've really kind of seen folks come all the way back. And people from all different backgrounds have done very well. People from all different backgrounds, it hasn't been the right job for them.
Okay.
So I can't tell you that it's, we need to target that person.
Well, that's good. That's helpful.
But you can also have one call
Yes, ma'am.
that can flip somebody right out of the job, right?
Absolutely.
Because it can be so, it's very traumatic.
This is a
Job.
very high stress.
Yes.
We were talking earlier. It reminds me of people working air traffic control at Kennedy. That's a really high stress job, and this can be as well.
We've seen some folks who are very, very good trainees, very, very good trainees, take that call and it changes it for them. And so I understand.
Well, I appreciate the briefing, and I think it's important that we look at the manpower because you remember we've added fire, we've added police over the last couple of years. This is an area where we need to keep up with growth. So, are you comfortable with the guidance from the board on this?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we will, with everybody's consent, we'll take a short recess. Thank you. Make a quick run. And the next item on our agenda is the part-time employees discussion. Mr. Teague.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board. Patrick Teague, Director of Human Resources. And I'm here to discuss benefits for part-time employees as well as a possible migration of some of our temporary workforce to part-time regular positions. So a little background first. Our workforce is comprised of several position types. We have what are called full-time regular positions with acronym FR, part-time regular positions as PR, and then we have a variety of temporary workforce, including seasonal, which are positions that return during specific seasons each year, full-time temporary and part-time temporary. And then the last category are on-call temporary positions. Those are folks who are available during peak work times, think of tax season, or if you have unexpected absences, think of someone going out for an extended medical situation. So as part of that workforce snapshot, the way we're currently configured, and your budget numbers that you'll see here are going to be the published James City County and JCSA budget numbers. There will be later on in additional slides some of our partner agencies that we provide human resources for that follow our policies but are not part of our budget process. So the numbers will be a little different depending on which slide we're talking about. But for the purposes of what benefits are folks eligible for, we have 787 budgeted positions, and they receive full benefits that are available to staff and work a minimum of 40 hours. Our part-time regulars, we have approximately 48, and they receive partial benefits, and those are prorated based upon the number of hours those positions work, and they work somewhere less than 30 hours during a typical week. Temporary employees, we have approximately 391 within our budget, and there are no benefits associated specifically with those positions except for what's required by law, Social Security. And they work a non-regular schedule or have a specific end date to their position. And then we have approximately 51 on-call positions. And again, those are no benefits, scheduled as needed, no end date. So we're here to discuss, a temporary staff member had questioned our use of temporary, which initiated a legal review of how we've categorized our temporary employees. Based upon the review, we feel some of those employees really are functioning more as part-time regular versus temporary. So we are currently working with our departments to review the approximately 442 temporary and on-call employees to determine their correct classifications.
Can I ask a question here?
Sure.
So are you reviewing the positions or the employees?
It's interesting, and that's a great question. It's a bit of both, and it's mainly related to how the person in that position is being utilized. We've gathered 3 years of payroll data to determine if there's a consistency from year to year within departments based on those individuals. And if they are, then we analyze what job, they're all classed in a job, and those jobs match our current full-time positions, but they're temporary. And what we're trying to do is match to see how many hours should those positions be working. And if we were to convert some to part-time regular, how many would that equate to?
And so would those same people necessarily be the people that filled that position, or would it possibly be, would it be something that we would advertise and we would go and say Scott, Jim, and John could all three apply for something?
Yeah,
or are we there yet?
Yeah, I'll get there in the presentation a little later, but that is definitely one of the areas we have to consider as part of this discussion.
And Ms. Larson, just to clarify, we sort of had the policy in place, as others have, that said when you got 15 hours a week as a sort of a regularly scheduled thing, that was the trigger for becoming a regular part-time or part-time regular. We would bring it to you during the budget process. You actually approved a few of those last year. The people did, in fact, have to apply. He's going to address that in a minute, but it was a position you created, people applied for. Normally, the person that had been performing those duties was the best applicant and hired, but there was a process for that.
Okay.
So
Thank
he
you.
is going to talk a little more about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So then breaking this down so you can see the number of hours and the types of benefits. Again, the 787 regular positions, minimum 40, are part-time regulars. There's 47 who work less than 30 but more than 20. And then we have one part-time regular position within the budget that's currently scheduled at less than 20 hours. And then we have the temporary and on-call. And what we're recommending is raising that benefit, which is currently at 780 hours, approximately 15 hours per week, to a threshold of 20 hours, which would equate to 1,040 hours per year, exactly half of a full-time position.
And his benefit, when he talks benefits, it's not health insurance for the part-times. Our full-times do get health insurance. Our part-times do not. It's primarily paid time off of some sort, whether that's vacation or sick leave, maybe depending on a hire date, or PTO time, again, depending on hire date.
That's currently.
Yeah, that is currently. So the slide we have here goes into a little more detail about what those benefits look like for our part-time regular staff. We have prorated leave starting at 780 hours, meaning if you work at least 780 hours, 15 hours per week, you get prorated benefits. For leave, you have 11 paid holidays, tuition assistance, deferred compensation, employee assistance program, and if authorized, an annual pay increase. So another way to look at that in our proposal is currently that cutoff is 780 hours, 15 hours per week, no benefits. We'd like to move that towards half of our full-time position, 20 hours per week. And then looking at what greater than 780 to 1508 would mean would be tuition assistance, deferred comp, some of those pieces we talked about. And then this is where the healthcare conversation part comes in. If you work more than 30 hours, you are required by the Affordable Care Act to provide health insurance. So any of our folks who are working 30 or more hours are offered health insurance. Why do we offer benefits to our part-time regulars? Pretty much, I'm sure everyone here is aware our unemployment rate is at historic lows. In July, Virginia was still at 2.9. For the 13th month in a row this past month, I believe it was the month of July, more open jobs than unemployed active job seekers, 13 months in a row. That's the longest post-war expansion. Average tenure of our part-time staff with benefits, 7 years. Our longest, this is the most amazing one to me, our longest tenured part-time regular employee is 31 years with us. And in exit interviews for our staff who are leaving those positions, they've indicated coworkers are the number one reason they like the job. Number two are the benefits. We did a market survey to determine what we felt was the appropriate level in which to offer benefits and what were some of our competitors in the market doing. And you'll see York County at 1040, it matches where our proposal is. Very similar set of benefits. Newport News is slightly higher. And then there's James City County for comparison. And then we go private and some other locals. So when you look at the school district, they began offering health insurance to their employees at 20 hours a week. Great Wolf Lodge, there's no minimum for their selection of benefits. Busch Gardens is between 1248 and 1508, or about 24, 29 hours a week. And each will offer a slightly different a la carte menu of benefits. William and Mary begins at 1,000 hours. So what would that look like for our current part-time workforce? And again, these are positions within our budget. We would recommend looking again, I'll go over the numbers with you. The less than 1040, we currently have 12 individuals occupying those positions. Positions between 1040 and 1299, we have 47. 13 to 1599.27. Anything again, which is the 30-hour threshold, greater than 1560 would require healthcare by law. We're looking at a total current part-time regular workforce of about 90 positions. So we talk about disruption, and disruption would mean administrative and operational changes. You would have increased turnover and reduced employee morale, and that would be the measure we use to say which options are more appealing or less appealing. And one of the things we consider in that disruption is we would prefer to grandfather existing employees rather than removing any benefits that they may have become used to in their employment. So we have three options. No change to our current threshold of 780, 15 hours a week. And that would be the least disruptive, but we don't believe it's really following what the market in our area is doing regarding benefits for part-time employees. Number two, we would remove benefits, would being the most disruptive, and that really does not follow the market because we don't have competitors in the job market that don't offer some level of benefits to their part-time employees. So our suggestion is adjusting these benefits from 780 to 1040. It'll have some level of disruption, but as you saw from the chart below with grandfathering, we're really talking about marketing these positions as 20 hours or more a week with benefits and have very much fewer of the positions that would be below that threshold. And we believe this follows the market. So what we're recommending is to come back to you at another point in January to discuss moving some of our temporary on-call employees that we believe are misclassified to part-time regular positions and allow those folks to be slotted into those positions once they're created as regulars, as opposed to going through a recruitment process. Part of that is, as you saw, we have temporary employees who've been with us 5 or 10 years, and there's a certain skill set that would be appropriate to retain without a competitive process. So we're recommending for ease of operations that we're able to move those individuals. Not everyone would choose to move to a 1040 position, a 20-hour-a-week position, because we do have employees who work less than that, and that may not fit within their given life or work schedule. We suggest adjusting the benefit threshold for our part-time regular employees from 15 hours a week to 20. An annual increase would apply to all of our full-time and part-time regular positions, and our current part-time employees would be grandfathered. A couple caveats to add to this is any of our regular positions also have grievance rights, meaning they have a right to contest any time that they're removed or there is some type of discipline action related to their position. So it does increase some of that particular workload, but it also gives a greater investment to that employee to that position. And our annual increase, we would, during the budget process, discuss the possibility of extending that to our temporary workforce as well, as part of keeping with the market salary rates. So timeframe process is we would revise Chapter 5 of the Personnel Policy Manual and bring that to your meeting in November for approval. And then we would finish the workforce analysis and bring initial recommendations to your January meeting.
And part of this that Patrick may have covered is part of the legal review said it really, in their opinion, it didn't matter if somebody, we used to use a 15-hour-a-week sort of threshold. Legal's opinion was that really didn't matter. If it was a position that was 5 or 10 hours a week, but we had them year after year after year after year, they really weren't temporary. Mm-hmm. And so we will have some that we would recommend to you that move into the part-time category. They'll do the same job. They'll still work a 5 or 10 hour a week schedule, but they wouldn't get any of the paid time off. So there would be some of what he has to evaluate in talking with the departments, primarily Parks and Rec. And I guess the library has another.
Library has a small group.
But the other departments have a
scattered in each department.
But is that threshold an okay threshold? It took me a while to catch up to think that we ought to even offer paid time off to our part-time staff, but it's not uncommon, at least in our area or in parts of Virginia. So I do think being competitive, that's where we are. Talking with some of our department heads, our janitorial staff, I think, are almost all part-time, and that little bit of time off does tend to help them significantly. So the most of them in our part-time category are lower paid employees. But an hour here, an hour there does help them. So at least from General Services, Grace was very concerned with that threshold. 20 she was okay with, but that is, I want to make sure the board's okay with that, because all of his work going forward would bring it back to that being the right number.
I guess what I was trying to wrap my head around was the concept of a temporary position being there for a long time. And, you know, I guess is what you're looking at in this process would be an evaluation of those positions, that those would be the most likely ones that if it's been there, you know, a long time, or it's the most likely to make the transition. That to me, a temporary position is one that says, okay, this is until January 1st, 2023.
Yeah.
Okay. Or this one is until this project is done. You know, or so a specific time frame or stop point. But the idea that we had a temporary person that could just be on forever just struck me as odd. And that's if what we're looking at here in this evaluation of this is to try to rectify some of that, I think that's one of the things that we need to be doing. And I understand the on call, you know, the lifeguards for the pool, things like that, seasonal, you know, those are I understand. So temporary and on call, I think, needs to have a much clearer definition of what we're expecting of it, and if we're expecting more, then it probably needs to be up into that part-time.
Yeah.
And how does that affect? I know some of our temporaries were grant associated with. We got a grant for 3 years, and we're hiring a temporary, and that grant, and then the grant got renewed, so everything just kept going. And so, what does that affect anything with our ability to get a grant, changing that status?
It doesn't. We have a couple of methods. In practice, typically what will happen is the first year we have a grant, we will ask for a temporary position. If the grant is reauthorized, then what we'll do is establish what's called a limited duration position. That can be a full-time position with benefits, and it is scheduled based on funding, and that funding can end at any time when the grant ends. The only difference between that type of position and a regular position is there are no separation rights. In other words, you sign up for this position knowing it can end at any time. So if the grant goes away, you don't get to displace another employee or take a vacant position.
That's the next question.
Yeah.
Would that give them a right then to say and come back with a grievance? Right. Say you give me benefits and everything else.
Yeah.
And I thought now that this wasn't a temporary position. Now you're telling me I'm fired, even though they knew they signed on, said it could end at any day.
Yeah, and we didn't really cover that category today because we're not looking for those positions out of the temp group. We're really looking at the positions that have continued 1 or 2 or 3 years as temporary, so they're not functioning the way they were intended.
And what I'd like to know what the cost is.
As far as I know, we don't have direct costs. There'll be a limited amount at separation based on any leave accumulated, but there are no direct costs to this transition. When we budget positions and we create the part-time regular, it's generally money taken from the temporary bucket and moved to the part-time regular without additional cost.
And Mr. Hipple, so budgeting, the hourly rate of pay for people will be very similar whether they're temporary or whether they're part-time regular. The difference in terms of cost, in terms of the benefit piece, will be if I'm working 20 hours a week, today as a temporary, I'm not getting any paid time off.
Right.
As a part-time, I will. And so that cost is not an additional cost, but it's time I'm not getting work. So if I'm still paying somebody $10,000 a year as a part-time, now I'm still paying $10,000 a year, but I'm losing, I don't know, 4 days a year or 5, whatever days a year.
But then that's a cost to our budget.
It doesn't cost more, but it's less productivity, right? Your $10,000 cost is the same. It's just over here, maybe I'm getting 1,040 hours, and then when they become part-time regular, I'm getting 1,000 hours because they get 40 hours of paid time off. So it is a real cost. It's just not an increased cost.
No, but it will be an increased cost because we're adding this to it. Because right now they don't get it.
Yes, sir. That's
So
right.
when I add this to it, that is an increased cost.
That's right.
And so that increased cost, I'd like to know what that increased
We can
cost
bring that with you.
would
We bring
be.
them.
And just out of curiosity, know,
Yes, sir.
because we're going to have to increase our budget next year or find a way in the budget to cover that increased cost one time. After that, we're adjusted to it.
That's right. We'll bring that as he does that analysis once we know the number of positions, because that's when he's got to work with the departments to determine are they really temporary or should they really be classified as part-time.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Patrick, your chart on the current part-time workforce on page is it, I guess 11, 15 shows 12 people who are currently working less than 1040.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how many of those people would fall between the old definition, the 780, and the 1040? Because those are the folks who would be grandfathered, right?
Yeah, and all of the 12 are, we have no positions that are under 780 right now.
Okay.
So
Okay, so
those 12 would be your
right.
group between 780 and 1040.
Right. Uh-huh. So, yeah.
And I can actually give you a rough idea who those 12 are. The bulk of those positions are on-call shelver clerks with the library.
Oh, okay. Okay. Uh-huh. I guess I just wonder about the question of what their reaction is going to be to. Would they be offered the opportunity to come up to the 1040?
If we create a regular position, they would. And then remember, one of the things we're asking in approval for this would be to grandfather these folks to retain whatever benefits they currently get.
Right, but not the benefits that would go to people who were in that
1040.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But Mr. McGlennon, today, these 12 are getting paid time off.
They are getting paid.
So
Yeah,
our ask of you would be to allow these folks that are working, because our current policy is 15 hours a week. When we really have taken that to be the trigger, and when we moved you there, you do get paid time off. So those 12 are getting paid time off, working probably 15 hours a week, but less than 20. Our ask would be that we continue with those 12 as they phase out. We wouldn't replace them with anybody less than 20 hours a week would not get paid time off.
But if they wanted to go up to 20.
That, to me, that's a department decision, but they certainly could. We might encourage that just to get the consistency there.
Right.
But that's really for them and their department. I mean, their schedule may or may not allow that, or they may or may not be interested, or we may or may not have a need for those 5.
Yeah, I mean, we're not
that's
going to
it.
automatically take 12 positions and
It was not
up
my
them
intent.
just to up them
Yeah.
without knowing that we don't need them.
No, we need to know that we need them.
Okay.
So I think that's an ongoing discussion with our part-time staff in general to make sure we're getting them when we need them. But the answer is, if we have the need for it and they're interested, then why not? But it wouldn't be automatic that happens.
Yeah, because I'd worried if we didn't need them and then we did up them, and then that would be an uptick on the budget of the library, that would have to come up with funding to add these extra individuals at 20 instead of 15.
Could somebody be shelving books for 10 hours a week and be getting paid time off currently?
No, not 10 hours.
They have to be at least
15 is our
15.
current minimum.
Okay.
And they could stay like they are. They wouldn't have to increase.
Well, now, the 10-hour person would need to go, if they're likely called temporary, because our trigger point had been that 15-hour week is a regular schedule. In terms of this discussion, if you work 10 hours a week, it doesn't really matter if you're consistently doing that year to year. So we'll need to move those to the part-time regular, but our recommendation would have them not getting paid time off to work 10 hours a week.
Right.
Right.
They just would move from temporary to Mr. Eisenhower's point, trying to clean that up. They're really not temporary. We have them year after year after year. we would get them in a part-time regular status. That would give them grievance rights, but outside of that, they wouldn't get any paid time off, which would be similar to where they are today.
But I guess I'm still wondering, but we don't currently have people who are under 15 hours?
We do. They're in the temporary category.
Okay.
And that's some of what we
It's
believe is
391.
not right. That's correct. And a lot of those probably were our camp counselor and seasonal folks
Right.
through the summer, because that number does fluctuate. But there's some of that number that is employed year round, year after year with us, that are less than 15-hour people.
And that's also the on-call group will definitely fall into the less than.
That'll add 51 more to it.
Yeah, I don't see them all converting. I still see
Right.
you'll have a lot of them that will determine really are temporary or that really are on call, but there'll be a number that needs to move over.
Yeah, on-call, it does not work a regular schedule, so it doesn't meet the regular position definition.
Right.
So those will likely stay on call, and those would be the temporary employees who work 5 hours a week if you averaged it over a year.
So we'll just get rid of the temporary position.
Yeah, what we're really trying to do is come with a finite number of temporary positions that we utilize year after year that really should be regular.
And Mr. Well, some will still be temporary, like our seasonal employees, they're still
Right, yeah.
temporary. Or we have a project or somebody in social service, they can still be temporary. So there's still a need for that classification, but some of that 391 really ought to be part-time regular, less than 20 hours, no paid time off. We just need to categorize them correctly.
Okay.
All right. And has there been any discussion, you got any feedback from the folks who are holding these temporary positions about?
We haven't had any specific discussions. We have talked to a variety of staff who are in the temporary workforce related to that year after year, but we have not surveyed the part-time regular staff simply because our goal is to hold everyone harmless in moving that benefit threshold up. So hopefully there would be no impact for our part-time regular current staff because we would be grandfathering those under 1040 to keep where they're at right now. We just wouldn't replace those positions with under 1040 with benefits.
And Mr. McGlynn, one of John Carnifax's concerns last fall when I first arrived was, hey, he has these part-time staff that have been here year after year who haven't gotten a raise in 3 or 4 years. And they were the temporary and on-call because they weren't getting whatever general wage increase we were doing for other employees. Well, moving these temporary employees into that part-time regular status, if there's funds allocated, they will then qualify for that. And to Patrick's point, we'll be evaluating the temporary and on-calls to see, should we be doing some small increase? If we're doing it for all employees, should we be doing that? We haven't been. So that it should be a betterment for all of them. Now, does it move them to the paid time off piece? And we haven't talked with them as a group. It doesn't, but it doesn't put them in any worse position. It puts them a little better. And if there's a part-time position for which they feel qualified that becomes vacant, they can apply for that and crest that 20-hour threshold if that fits them.
Yeah, if that works for what they're interested in.
So the temporary and on-call, we have 442. Out of the 442, how many of you, going on John's question, how many of you heard from that,
Just ask any of the questions.
Probably no more than 3 to 4 at this stage. We haven't actively engaged the temporary workforce to determine specifically whether they're happy with their temporary assignment. I think that's more at a department level.
Right.
They're really managed at a department level rather than at an administrative level.
So
But again, the reason why we're here is some of those temporary staff have come back year after year.
right.
So clearly they like working here, and if we are going to have them in a regular schedule, we should put them in a regular position.
So about, say 99% of them are very happy, seems to me.
Yeah, I would have a tough time because remember, a lot of your temporary are truly temporary. Of that 442, we might come back and I'm just throwing a number out, 90 positions we think need to be converted to regular. That means there's 300 some that aren't, and those are truly needed only for a short period of time or only seasonal or during peak work loads.
Yeah, it's good just to
We're
hear.
not counting on them for our day-to-day operations.
Right. It's good to hear that they're happy, that.
And while we haven't engaged our part-time staff, we have talked with our leadership group in terms of department heads and trying to have their input on this process as well. So they're supportive of the concept of what we're recommending as well.
That's all I have. Thank you.
So we have consensus to move forward on that? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Shaping Our Shores. Update on Shaping Our Shores master plan. Garland Brittle will be next.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hello,
How you doing, Karen?
I'm Carla Brittle. I'm with Parks and Recreation. I have Alistair Ferguson with me from Parks and Recreation too. And we are here to update you on the progress that's been made on updating the Shaping Our Shores master plan. Those that aren't aware, the master plan was created in 2009, and it is a plan that guides the development of our 3 waterfront parks that we have in James City County. It includes Chickahominy Riverfront Park, James City County Marina, and the Jamestown Beach Event Park. The plan that was created in 2009 was very comprehensive. It had a lot of public input, a lot of input from the stakeholders from that time. But however, we think it's time to update the plan now due to its age and the fact that we've added a lot of amenities to those parks since then. We need to bring those plans and get them realigned with work that's been done. So in the fall, we created a James City County-wide employee team that started meeting to look at updating the plan. This team had members from different departments to include, obviously, Parks and Recreation, Economic Development, Planning, Capital Projects, and the James City County Service Authority. These parks in particular, unlike playgrounds at Kidsburg, where it's just parks recreation amenities, these parks have economic drivers that we needed to look at. So you have people from Economic Development help. They have a lot of environmental factors just because they're on the water. So you need more planning input into what you're doing. Some of these parks have water issues, so you have Service Authority input. So we feel like we've created a really good team to look at the plan and to update it. So like I said, we've been meeting since the fall, and the goals that we set for the plan update were to evaluate and confirm the success of the existing amenities that we had in the parks, see if they were meeting the current needs of our citizens. We also had the goal of identifying unmet needs and opportunities we have, see what people have been asking for since the time we created the plan, see what some of the opportunities are for expansion, if there's a need. The third goal was to evaluate the maintenance and longevity of the park features that are in those parks. That's something that's oftentimes overlooked. The maintenance, ongoing repair of the amenities that were there or that we built could be better things to do now to do away with the maintenance issues. We also wanted to learn from the community what is desired now in each park. That's going to be part of this process. And we want to, in the end, create a plan to develop the guide for our development for the next decade. So with those goals in mind, the team started with some site visits. We went to all 3 parks. We had the park managers give us a tour, talk to us about the current uses of the parks, what the people are doing, what they see needs are. We all bus tour, looked at that, came back, and started to work on the plan by looking at the maps. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, if you've had a chance to look at the old Shaping Our Shores plan. It had a conceptual map for each park. And so we thought the best thing to do was to start with those maps and do updates. So I'm going to pass around some maps. There were maps in your packet, but they're really small. So I have bigger ones, but I also brought my boards if you want a better look. The first one I'd like to start with is Chickahominy Riverfront Park. So what I have first off is the old map from the original Shaping Our Shores from 2009. And I can pull up. Okay, small. All right, and then that's what was originally in the plan. And I'm going to pass around. What the team has proposed. So just a little background information on Chickahominy River Park Park. Since 2009, there have been some amenities added. We have updated an RV loop with paving and utilities. We've resurfaced the pool. We've added a new splash pad. There's been addition of a partnership with William & Mary to create a rowing boathouse. And we've done some updates to the water system out there. So these items were added since 2009. And so we added them to the current map that you're looking at. Just to give you some data on the park right now, the current attendance is well over 336,000 citizens enjoying that park every year. Current revenue is around 460,000 a year. That park is revenue positive. It generates more than it costs to operate.
That's good.
Some of the current drivers for revenue and participation in that park include camping. There's 123 campsites there. The boat ramp usage. There's fishing tournaments, around 20 every year. We've got a huge rowing program. I'm not sure if you're aware how big rowing has gotten in this community. There are over 110 middle schoolers and high schoolers participating in the club sport there. We have over 50 adults participating in rowing, and we have the William & Mary club team that goes out of that. So a lot of participation there. There's the pool usage. You can buy an annual pool pass there, and the pool is used by campers too. We have boat and RV storage there currently, and it has a wait list of 36 on that. There's kayak storage racks that you can rent by the month. It generates a little revenue. And then we have special events there to include races. They've become very popular in Jackson County, so we do host a fair share of races, Ironman kind of things. So looking at that, the usage that's being seen right now, the team looked at what needed to be added to the map, what needed to be taken away. And the first thing you'll note in the new plan is there is a proposed JCSA water treatment plant that sits in the middle of the park. That was identified by the county as a possible water source, and this being the best location for that water treatment plant. So you can see we've stayed away from doing development in the area where that plant is located and done the development around it. This needed to be shown on the master plan, obviously for us in future planning, but also for the service authority for them to gather permits and things like that if they need to moving forward. So that takes precedence. You can see that there's an intake and outtake line shown on those.
And that's a pretty big chunk of the park.
It is a big piece.
Right.
The intake and you're talking about lines. This is what the area labeled V.
Yep.
Okay, and where would the intake or
The
X?
top line is orange, and the bottom line is the
It's got a little picture of
more
point.
kind of an
orangey color.
Right here. Intake.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. Okay, I got it.
Yes, I
I got it. Okay, yeah.
All right, so
There
that's
we go. Okay.
where they bring in the water from the river and then treat it, the plant, and they have an outflow. So that area stayed clean. Also, we denoted the gas pipeline that runs through that park, and you can't build on that either. So there's some limitations really on what you can do here. So once we got those things and drew the RPA and the floodplains and all that kind of stuff on here, then we were left with where we could actually put stuff. And in terms of the three parks that we looked at, this one stayed closer to the original plan. We didn't add a whole lot here. There you can see in the little map at the bottom, there's a lot of archaeology here on this park. And so you also have to take that into consideration where you're locating things. So we had the first thing, which was the water treatment plant. We're going to relocate the RV and boat storage to the front edge of the park, the bottom right-hand side there are. That allow us to expand it. We have a wait list right now for that. We can expand what we're doing. And it opens up the area where it's currently at for the rowing facility.
So this is not actually, I noticed it said long-term RV.
Long-term.
But that didn't mean people are staying there for a long time. It just means they're storing the vehicles
Storing it
there.
long-term,
Okay.
yes. We removed the second entrance that was on the park. Couple reasons for that. One, we think it's easier to control the large park if everybody's coming in and out of one entrance. This is a scenic corridor, so there was some question whether we could even get a second entrance there. And also, you don't want to cross the Virginia Capitol Trail in two different places right there with the bikers. So we're going to go back to one entrance there. And you can see we built a road in the middle of the park that would then take care of the problem that the second entrance was going to solve, which is it's going to divert the rowing traffic away from a lot of the campers and just put them back where they need to go. And we have an addition of several amenities for the campers. We have a propane filling station located near the store. And the store was in the original plan, it's just relocated a little bit. So we're also going to add laundry rooms to the new bathhouses when we build those. That's a big amenity that we don't offer that a lot of campgrounds do. We're going to add a recreation/environmental education room onto the store and relocate the pump out station to be more convenient for the RVs. And that's the bulk of the changes for this map.
And Carla, just let me make sure I'm clear. We're asking the board, just make an awareness of it. You're going to hold public meetings.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not getting any decision unless there's just things that jump out to the board that you just don't agree with or would like us not to share publicly or consider. But it really is just conceptual to go out for public meetings and make sure.
This is a preliminary map that we've come up with. It's only been vetted with staff. So before we do any public input, get opinions, we wanted to run it past you to see if you would agree with what we're proposing before we even take it out to the public.
I'd like to see if we could add another pier to the facility. And
for fishing? Okay. All right. So we have the one existing fishing pier, and then this has the docking for mooring where you can come in and
hang out.
All right. So additional fishing pier.
Additional fishing pier.
Are you wanting it on the riverside or Gordon's Creek?
It'd be more protected on Gordon's Creek, but I'm worried coming in there in the creek, we're limited with space.
Is there a lot of usage of the current fishing pier?
It is popular. It does get.
Do we charge for that fishing pier?
No. To stand up.
No.
You can just go down there and fish.
And see, that's a most localities charge for their fishing piers, which I like. And your Perfect State Park, that's charged on that fishing pier as well. To go in and park, you have to pay a fee to go out there and fish. But it'd be nice to have an extra one just for families and all, and be able to go down there and fish. But it would have to work out where y'all have to position it somewhere where you've got this going on and you don't have a fishing pier right in the middle of it. So.
And it could be both of those mooring piers aren't needed. One could be an additional fishing pier, and one could be just for mooring.
That'd be nice.
That's something we could look at.
So what's driven most of the increased revenue?
Revenue in this park? Well, the campsites are filled every holiday weekend in the summertime. So that we do have a lot of fishing tournaments now. The pool revenue has grown. The splash pad edition has been nice. And,
I'd say it's large. Yeah, all of those, but largely camping. We've just seen an increase, especially in RV camping.
And will we look at putting even more camping to enhance that?
We're not proposing additional sites necessarily. We took this kind of vague because the old map, if you look, it kind of designated what was RV, what was cabin. And we kind of took those designations away so we can just kind of be more creative with what people are doing. Right now, RV camping is surging in popularity.
It is.
So that leaves us the option to make more RV parking versus primitive camping.
Right.
Not to say we can't add more, is going to be on a growth thing. We have some space over in the field, probably. We've added a camping area, A1. It's kind of in a wetland area, so there's no parking with that, but that's a new type of camping where you kayak in.
Uh-huh.
Kayak, or it's for the bikers. So it's primitive camping with tents.
Right.
That you have on the backs. So,
Tents and mosquitoes.
yes. So there's that. But we didn't really put a number of camping sites.
Right, yeah.
You can just be created as it goes and as growth comes.
And I'd say even if the total number didn't change, we could focus on, the camping the RV camping, like you said, has grown. And so maybe the total number of campsites would stay roughly the same, but we could have more RV camping or more ideal RV camping.
Right.
So,
Because it's amazing. You go to places and they're just packed.
right.
They're just packed. And people get them year after year after year.
So with that comes the need to store them
Right.
for our citizens. So that is a need that we can address by that. And this does show we have proposed, even though there's rowing there now, probably looking at an additional rowing facility to complement that growth.
Additional building as well?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. Was there room to do that adjacent to the existing one?
Yes.
And that would kind of be in partnership with William and Mary. I think I read.
That would be driven by the Williamsburg Boat Club. They
Boat Club.
are interested in building their own boathouse to go along with it, kind of like the way William and Mary did it.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Well, it's really nice to see something this well used and pay for itself.
Yeah.
It is nice.
Because that's our rarity with parks.
Parks, yeah,
This
most
is,
parks don't have, revenue.
This is the crown jewel of the county in parks, I think, right?
Any other questions on Chickahominy?
And the pink is the gas line that comes across there and just goes right through the middle of the
Colonial
thing.
pipeline.
Is that elevated or underground?
It's
Or
underground.
It's underground.
Never know what's there.
Yeah.
Not until you
Not till you dig.
Until you dig into it.
Yeah. It goes all the way through those gardens.
All right, let me get the next. I'm gonna pin this out here.
If you like the pipeline safety seminar, you're invited on a regular basis.
Top one.
additional six.
All right, so here you're looking at the James C. County Marina. Since 2009, Parks and Recreation took over the management of the marina from the contractor that we had in place. The Board of Supervisors leased 10 acres of land to the EDA, who then in turn leased some land to Billsburg Brewery, where they built their manufacturing facility and their tasting room and that wonderful deck that's there now. So in addition to that, we have a $3.1 million Phase 1 water improvement project that begins in the winter time. And that'll be coming before you for a approval of a bid when we go out to bid for that in the next few months. So that's what we've done, the investments we've made there. Current attendance for this park is 300,000. In FY17, it was 118,000. So that growth is spurred dramatically by Billsburg.
Billsburg.
Yeah.
That's great.
Current revenue is around 217,000 a year. It was 232 several years ago. That's decreased because we did take 14 boat slips offline. They were up in this corner down here that floods frequently, and they were very shallow too. It's harder for boats to get in and out. So we just, instead of doing maintenance when we know we're getting ready to do a rehab project in the water there, we just took them offline. This park is also revenue positive in terms of revenue expenses.
That's good. Several Waller Wood.
Yeah. So the current participation in revenue drivers for this park, we have 75 boat rental water slips, and there's approximately 80 on a wait list. That 80 is kind of fluid because some people will put their name on both lists, whether it's covered or uncovered. They just want whatever comes first. So there's boat ramp usage, kayak and bike rentals. There's dry boat storage, long-term boat storage. We have 40 on the wait list for that. And there's kayak storage racks, and then obviously Billsburg. Those are the drivers for there. This map had substantial changes from the 2009 map. Many items on the first map were located in the floodplain in the RPA, and so we removed all of those that we didn't believe, county staff didn't believe they could ever be built. In addition, it showed development on a peninsula that can't even support construction. So if you look at the old one, it showed construction right here on this peninsula, this green area right here. We removed all of that, and that substantially shrunk the amount of land that you have to do anything on. So we made the following changes. We eliminated the parking peninsula on that side. It had a ramp over there also. So we had to take those out due to the wetlands issues there. We removed all the condos, the hotel, and the retail shops that were originally shown, which was not actually supported by the Board of Supervisors in the first adoption. There was a caveat that they approved the master plan without those. So we went ahead and just took those off. And we believe the site is too small anyway to actually accommodate them. If we had tried to do that, it wouldn't have fit. We relocated the marina building out of the floodplain. That building floods continually. We have northeasters, the whole first floor there. So we're proposing to move that up and out of the way. We are removing the dry stack storage that was shown on that plan because it was located in the floodplain, and there's a lack of additional space to put it anywhere else. We couldn't find space for it. So that's removed. We are adding additional short-term daily trailer parking. Right now, there's not enough room for the people that want to launch their boat for the day to park. It's kind of haphazard where they're finding.
Yep.
And it's not easy to maneuver those big trailers in that small space. We are moving long-term boat storage over to Jamestown Beach Event Park due to space constraints here. Right now, where this parking is right here is kind of a grass lot that people can rent space to park their boat in long-term, and all that's going to have to move across the street to the other park. There just isn't space to put parking for the daily use and to have those there.
Be more attractive too.
Yeah. We're proposing to add a second entrance, which is up here by that new parking lot right here. So you can pull in that parking lot and then walk down to Billsburg or to the park office to rent your canoes and kayaks. We're going to add a semi-permanent event tent. There's currently one that's always been posted there by Billsburg. Do a more permanent type structure for the ongoing events. We're relocating the proposed restaurant and food service down a little bit, also out of the RPA. And we're relocating the boat ramp and the fuel dock. That's going to coincide with the upcoming construction that we have planned. So this plan does eliminate the second boat ramp that was proposed and the dry stack storage.
Now to the dry stack or the boat storage or the covered portion 12, that's going to be rebuilt. Is that showing the dotted line where the existing is?
Yes, they're going to be rebuilt, and those are both covered. And then the one beside it is going to be built, and that's proposed to be uncovered.
So that would give you 44 slots on each of these covered.
It's going to take us up to around 100 and, that's
88.
key, 108 or 9, is that right, Austin?
Yes, I believe it's 108.
108.
108.
And the covered are 22. They're a little bit larger slips there, but I believe they're 22 apiece.
Okay.
Take us from approximately 75 up to 108.
Now would it to, I know most people want it covered rather than an open. Would the cost of slip rentals cover the cost of the cover?
No, not for approximately 20 years.
It'd take that long
Yes,
to recoup that back.
it would. The cost of steel, what it is right now.
Oh, it is terrible.
Yeah.
I know that. Got hung on that one.
So I don't know if this is appropriate. The one question I get asked out about all the time there is the dredging. And
That's part of the,
is that this coming year? Okay, great. Okay, thanks. Good.
There's, you want to tell them what's coming before them? For that project?
Sources of funding for it?
Yeah, well, it's in our CIP for FY20 for this first phase of this project, and the dredging will be done in 2 phases. So most of these uncovered slips and the channel coming in and out is the first phase, and the covered boathouses, which they would be part of the second phase several years down the road. The dredging for that area would take place then. We don't have the drawings yet on the dredge spoils. But that's all part of the site plan that's in process right now. So.
There was a spot over across the road where
We're proposing, yes.
Right.
for that way the dredge spoils would go over there.
Yes.
Question for you on this, right along the existing bulkhead right there, where you have these, looks like additional, is that transient, or are those like the others where those are rentals? Yeah, that area right there.
Those are uncovered slips that you can rent.
Okay, so those are still rentals.
Yes.
Where do you
There is
have?
some transit proposed. Oh, I have to look at the key number.
Yeah, I thought there was something.
Yeah, so those will be mostly monthly with some transient. And we'll have the ability to operationally play with that, depending on demand.
What you get?
what kind of demand do you get now? Because I tried to go up there one day
On your boat?
on a jet ski and jump off and have lunch and go to Billsburg, and we finally got it settled, but it wasn't simple. So, and I can't imagine I'm the only person
Well,
that.
for that, for just tying off to go to Billsburg, we hope to utilize this 23, this walkway here at the bottom, and it'll be able to
See
just
that right
tie
there?
off. The transients are going to
Okay.
be your overnight transients,
Okay.
and those are going to have a fee associated with them.
You
Yeah.
can tie up
So-
here, more
But that-
here.
Those
but
are
no
kind of two
walk.
different things. If you just want to visit Billsburg, you should be able to just pull up, tie up, go
Right
visit.
there.
If you want to keep your boat overnight in a transient nightly, there'll be a nightly fee.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I think there's currently only like
Yeah,
4
you might have to switch to the night.
Or to what I call transient, 4 open slips, I think, right now, correct? House,
Right.
for you to dock and just go to Billsburg. So it's not a lot.
Yeah.
This would give you a lot more opportunity than for tying up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, the Surrey Seafood House has done a really nice job
They really have.
of those types of, and that apparently was with some grant money too, because they have a note about that. So,
Now 18 is an overlook.
Yes.
And what is that?
You notice that we put in a little walking trail around there.
Right.
And it's just a dock, and you can, view the sunset, little
the Bald Eagles.
environmental aspects to the park.
Can you fish off it?
It's out in the swamp.
There is.
It's out in the swamp, man.
Yeah. Well, that you can catch fish. I fished off that whole bank.
We haven't designated whether you could or not.
Because I'm thinking with kids and school kids, and
Yeah.
I know some of our teachers, and I've helped them with it, where they'll get 3 or 4 children that, okay, if you hit this point, I'll take you fishing in the morning. And you get 3 or 4 parents and 4 or 5 kids, and you run out before school and go fishing for an hour, and then get them back in school before school starts. And summertime is kind of a fun thing it's kind of a extra little something.
That's awful early because my daughter's in school before 7 a.m.
Oh yeah, you get up.
But that does change. I mean, you have to have some way to clean, right? I mean, you're going to have some you're going to have plumbing back there or something in order to, if you make it a fishing dock as well.
Well, you don't have
You
to.
catch and release.
Yeah, you can catch a release, or you have to take them out. You don't have to clean them right there.
But no, I'm not even talking that. I'm talking like smell. I mean, I've been around fishing enough to know that if somebody throws up a dead fish or something like that, so I mean, it does add the ability to be able to have a hose down there to swish it off. So, I mean, I'm all about it.
There you go. Put a bucket in the string.
Yeah. There you go.
country clean.
Yeah.
One other thing I'd like to note is that we are going to move our paddlecraft rental has been very popular here with our canoes, kayaks, stand-up paddle boards. We're going to move
See up
that
here?
to this cove up here.
Here, this is where you'll
to
launch.
keep the paddlecraft and the motorboat activity separate from each other.
I could not get over how many people were out on Sunday going into the
Yeah.
marina in kayaks and paddle boards. It was unbelievable.
And this is by far our most popular site for that activity.
That area is going to be cleaned out. We call it the Cove.
Yep.
That's where the commercial fishermen have kind of been docking
They have.
and come and gone, and they've left like rotting docks and things and some
Yep.
rubble behind. So that's going to get cleaned out as part of the project that's coming before you.
And they won't be in there anymore?
If they want to stay there, they can rent one of the regular slips.
Yeah, because that was where you found all of them. Right back there. That was a spot of its own.
So we actually move our boat ramp around to the other
We
side.
do. We're moving it to the other side,
That's
out of
good.
this tight corner
Yeah.
right here. It's very congested if you've ever gone in there and looked.
It is.
And people are trying to launch where people are walking and parking their car.
Yeah.
You can see the gas pump is located right here, so we're getting that boat ramp out of the way of the gas pump. Because right now, it's right here, and you're trying to load and get gas, and it's all right in one area. You get to wait your turn. And the same place where the kayaks are launching too.
I think they'll be able to get in and out of there a lot quicker.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
And we're restoring all of that. You see, we have a living shoreline that's going to run along there. Take that that seawall there that's there down.
Bulkhead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever that
You
is.
can call it that.
Is Park and Rec currently running all the support for boating in the arena right now?
We do rent kayaks, that kind of thing. We also take the fees for the boat slips.
Right, and fuel.
We do. We do the fuel. The only thing we don't do is the marine repair services. It's a contractor. That's
Right,
there.
yeah. I guess I just want to think. I just encourage you to think hard about setting that up in ways that really make it convenient and pleasant experience for folks to get in and out quickly. And
It's nice.
It is. Very good.
The last part.
And so, Joe, just before we go on, if I could just go back to the potential restaurant, and I see the tasting room. That's being moved to that location from Billsburg or no? Billsburg?
Yes, it would be.
Okay.
They're currently on the upstairs
Right.
of the park building, which
Right.
has to get relocated into the floodplain. So that would go and move and to be with part of, half the building or whatever with that restaurant facility.
Okay. So that building will just be taken down, or
Yes.
yeah.
All right.
You said again, this one is cash positive, but it pays for itself.
All right, so the next park up is Jamestown Beach Event Park. Since 2009, we've done a lot of work here. Obviously, if you remember what that looked like before, there was no beach there. It was just a shoreline. We removed all the concrete rubble on the shoreline. We created 3 separate beach areas, and we brought in sand and planted grasses. So we created a beach where one wasn't before. We've expanded parking, created an accessible walkway to the beach, concrete walkway. We've added a restroom concession building, and we've created a paddlecraft launch site. Current attendance at this park, closing in on $300,000 a year. Current revenue is 91,000. In FY17, it was 64, so it's growing.
Yeah.
But this park is revenue negative. Doesn't
Figured it will with 91.
This one is. Per participation revenue drivers here is obviously the beach usage. There's a non-resident parking fee we charge. There's concession sales, kayak and SUP rentals, kayak storage racks, and special events to include races also. So for this map, development on this property is severely limited due to the historic sites that have been uncovered, and also due to the restrictive covenants that go with the grants that we use to purchase the property. There's two grants that have easements on this map, and those are denoted with the hashtags. There's everything behind this yellow line is one grant, and then everything with the hashtags is another grant. So you have to be really careful what you can do in those areas based on the covenants that came with them. So the first thing that the group obviously had to do was to relocate items that were in those areas that couldn't be there. So looking at the old map, the team agreed to remove cabins and camping from this site. We're proposing to take them off there and just keep all the camping at CRP. We feel like we're meeting the need there. It's easier to consolidate all camping on one site for oversight and for resources. So we're recommending that. We are going to relocate the fishing pier where it was shown in the old map. It was on VDOT property. So we're moving it up the end to the other end of the beach. So we'll still have fishing.
There you go. Question answered.
Yes. We're going to add additional restrooms and parking for events. In there is the performance venue. On the back of that, we're proposing to add restrooms there and some parking around there to support outdoor concerts. Addition of an event tent to use with the Ambler House for weddings and that kind of thing. And there's some considerations here that obviously are going to take some VDOT approval and assistance with, but the team would like to realign the park entrance along Jamestown Road to meet the road that leads to the marina. So look right there where they would meet, and you could just cross right over.
Be nice.
And then you build that intersection out, have turn lanes and that kind of thing. Make it a little safer, a little wider. Also, we're recommending closing the section of Green Springs that runs in front of the park and align it with Jamestown Road. This one in particular would take a lot of VDOT coordination. Green Springs Road runs down here. And if you're familiar with the park, it takes a jog right here and then comes right here. And what we're proposing is to do away with that road and just have Green Springs Road come to a stop onto Jamestown Road. And then you just turn left or right and get rid of that road.
Yeah. The only thing I'd be a little concerned about there is I think that intersection is going to have a lot of traffic, isn't it? With the activity at the marina and then
Which you're talking where it comes here,
where
or
we
are you
join,
coming
where
right
we come
here?
to Jamestown Road. Oh, am I not?
Where Green Springs joins Jamestown Road?
Yeah.
Right now, the traffic comes and it's a hairpin turn
Yeah, and it
right
comes
here.
there.
Comes to that same
and a
spot.
hairpin turn right
Back
here.
towards the marina.
Yeah.
So that would eliminate that roadway right in front of the park.
Right.
Just dead end it right here.
And that's always people are like, do I go? Do I turn? I think aligning it is going to make it a lot easier, and then taking the road from where the ferry is also going to make it easier because it's going to bring traffic down away from the ferry.
It also looks like the way you've got this set up is you have another entrance off of Green Springs Road now, which we didn't have before.
That's currently there.
Is that currently there?
It's just not,
It's just not used.
it's
but
got a gate.
It's an
It's got
over.
the gate there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that brings me to the next question. You have these little red G's.
those are gates.
Those are gates.
Yes.
Is that gates that we open when we're open to the public and close when we're closed, or
For the most part,
Well, the one on Green Springs is never open.
It's never open. It would be, it's gated, it'd be closed when we didn't feel like we needed it. There's some value in having one access point at a time when the park's not busy. That would be something we'd look at when you're running big venues, you need to get cars in and out of there. That option is there, depending on how how much we build up the entrance there. Could be an option, alternate option.
So your gates are to isolate the road that goes over to
To the Ambler's house.
Ambler's house or the parking lot for that venue there.
That's correct. We could gate that
And
off.
then another one would is that one right there would gate it to keep people from going out to the beach on that
would
upper
be,
road.
yeah, that would be to collect your parking fees. Right now, that your parking fees are like right when you come in, right here, about where the entrance is. And there's a ticket booth there, and you stop and you pay your fee. That backs up on Jamestown Road in the summertime. So we'll relocate it further into the park here, where your line can sit and wait, and the tenant will take the fees. And then there's a gate proposed here, because that's where we're proposing to move the storage area for boats. So that'll be some kind of gate or a key combo that the people that are renting there will have access to.
I guess my only comment, it's, if you did any kind of camping in that, because the appeal is if you're going to have a venue there for music, you're knocking festivals off that's not going to be an option for like a 2-day music festival, because most people want to come and camp and probably shouldn't be out driving from there to Chickahominy Riverfront Park. So I'm a little discouraged to see boat storage, frankly, going in a field where prior was a campground. But say again what you were saying about the grant and show me the line in that big field that you couldn't use for camping anyway.
The hashtagged area was the Kelp grant, which was used to purchase some of the property.
Okay.
That one is really restrictive on what you can do in it.
Okay.
Like, for instance, you can't build anything that blocks the view from the Ambler's house. So nothing can go in here.
Okay.
They don't want anything built in that area. The other one, which is this yellow one, is recreational in nature. So we can do recreational amenities with that one. Camping would be an allowable use in that area. One of the things I have here for additional consideration, which I wanted a little feedback from you on, is we did receive an unsolicited draft proposal from somebody that is interested in putting initially 25 camping cabins here, looking at some kind of public-private partnership with us. And is that something that you'd be willing to entertain? I don't. It would have to be. We would, if it's something we were interested in, then we would have to put a proposal out or a request for proposals and then see what we get. But that is an option. These buildings right here could be pushed over here. I mean, there's space that I think we could make it. In cabins, camping, we read the easement's really good, but camping is something that I think is allowable within that area.
Yeah, and I know it's an additional expense, but it does seem that if we're going to have a venue there for music, to put it to maximize what tourist value we might be able to get out of it, not just Friday night, concerts in the summer. We might want to look at not closing ourselves off to camping at that park.
Is that something you'd like us to? Would that be something you'd want to do a public-private partnership with, like what we received, or is that something you think Parks Operations should operate?
How do we operate? We'll go back to Chickahominy. You said we had a ratio of RV versus primitive camping. What's our maximum capacity in each one out there? Is it like you said it was? Is it like 100 sites or something? Or?
There's over 100 sites. I believe each site we have a maximum.
124.
Total. And I'd have to look this up, but I believe it's 6 people per site in terms of so we don't have a maximum. I don't know if there's a total maximum capacity there. We have some group sites for the Boy Scouts or other large groups.
Well, if we were looking at what you were talking about with over here and because that was where we had always talked about some sort of and cabins were mentioned at one time. I don't know whether, I would be very interested in seeing what the the cost and benefit would be of doing regular camping sites versus RV camping sites versus fixed cabins. Because the more you go, the greater the investment in infrastructure, and potentially the less capacity you have. I wouldn't reject it out of hand, but I would think we need to, if we really wanted to do some camping on this, especially with related to the venue, we ought to keep an open mind about what options we would have there. But I think that's the place, and I think the idea of wherever you put the boat storage could be off to one side or whatever.
I could see, doing a private partnership, and the guy contacted me as well, and I sent it over to y'all. Doing the cabins in part of it, and doing campers in the other part, and then if you had a wedding venue or something at the house, had a lot of guests, you could put the whole party right there in the cabins. They wouldn't have to bring campers. They could rent the cabins for the weekend and have their, and almost have access to everything, and they could stay there. And then campers could be in the other section where you pull your camper in. If one of us wanted to spend the night over there after an event, we could walk over to the cabin and stay. So.
Yeah, I just think you're bringing in a restaurant, hopefully across the street. It just seems to me the natural fit rather than to rule out all overnight stays over here.
I think putting camping back in the area somehow, Carla, we can do and see what the public comment is and bring it back to you.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to be specific on the public-private partnership.
No.
We can sort of do it as some general area from primitive to RV to cabins as potentials. And
Do that.
And what kind of facilities would you need for the camping in addition to the cabins and?
Well, what the individual proposed is the cottages have restrooms in them, what he proposed. It's sleep six.
Right.
You would have some kind of office, proposed initially a playground, and then golf carts that you can use with them and go across the street to the marina or up over to the beach. And that's in the first phase for the first 25. And initially, if that works, then he would add the others, and with that, I think a pool came with it, some other recreational amenities.
How many total is he looking at?
25, I think she said.
25 initially, and so we had him scale it back. I think, let's see. It doesn't say what it initially was. That shows a rendering, and that's, I could count, that's a lot of cabinets that he had proposed for there. But he wanted to start initially with 25, just to make sure that the revenue held. There's a picture of what was proposed, something like that. But we can add camping back in on the map in that area, and we can make a decision later what type of camping. If it's not those cabins that have restrooms in it, then obviously you've got to build the infrastructure to support camping. You have RVs. I don't know if it's that small of an area, if you would have a dump station or not. Bathhouse for tent camping. And then there's the staffing also. The question of, do you leave people camping in a park that's not staffed? Because right now it's not. Chickahominy, we've got it staffed. So
I just think it's something we should look at.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying,
I'm
but
not particularly interested, but I'll look at it, sure.
Yeah, I'm willing to look at it. I think it would, again, be dependent upon the proposal and what the costs and the benefits were.
And the bike races that you have down there and everything else, they just got a place to stay.
You got a lady over in your community that wants a bazooka for the bike races out there.
So it sounds like you're interested more in the public-private partnership for it, or
Both of them, I'm thinking that, and the, for the cabins and possibly the RV spots as well. So you can have both options in there.
I guess for me, I would say if we're not willing to do that, then we should consider moving the music venue to Chickahominy Riverfront. Just to somewhere where there's a place to accommodate that kind of thing. And then you're taking people away from restaurants, et cetera, that you have across the street. You're either going to do a full...
It's going to be a bear.
You're either going to do an experience.
Yep.
And, this just seems like the perfect
It does.
fit for that kind of thing, but, you know, I just think it's something to consider. Because right now, we're only utilizing, I mean, I think the concerts are great, but we're utilizing it 4 nights in the summertime.
Right.
So that's a lot of,
Where it could be every weekend.
pardon?
Where it could be every weekend, a
Yeah.
concert.
Something, yeah. So,
Another addition here is the a running center. You'll see that denoted as F
yes.
on the plan.
Is that the one that was previously talked about at War Hill?
It is.
Okay.
Proposing to move it here, based on the popularity of the site, to hold community racing events, and also to provide Parks and Rec staff offices as part of the proposal. This was, brought to us by a private foundation, would build the building and operate it.
And they were interested in doing it at this
They are.
location now? Oh, that's
They are. This site does host a lot of races also.
The
Now-
only thing that hung us last time was they were going to have a banquet
Yes,
with alcohol.
they can do that here.
They can do that, so we'll make sure that they could, so that'll fit, because the other spot with proximity to school and all that, that was one of the,
It was all the youth athletic fields.
yeah,
Right.
uh-huh.
Right. That
So
part does
this
have
one,
alcohol. This one does
good.
have alcohol,
Right.
obviously, because we have the concerts there.
Yep.
So,
So that'll fit with what they're looking
Yes.
for. Good.
I do think we need to be prepared to talk about what their route will be, because to Mr. Eisenhower's point, that end of the county, while I realize it brings in a lot of tourists and is appreciated, that the housing developments along Green Springs Road take the brunt of the races that go between the parks. And so I think we need to be able to say that if we're going to be bringing the running center here, because I know before that part of the appeal out at the War Hill track was that it was going to be, it was 5K, right? Could
Yeah,
be done.
allows that
So
now.
where would the 5K be contained here, or would it be bigger? So we should probably be prepared to talk about that.
what he's looking for, what I initially read, is an open field area, which is right here, where the races would start and stop. Not necessarily that you would contain the whole race on the side.
Right. Where would he go, though? So we probably need to know that. Just so we're as you take this out to the public, we're ready for that question.
Can they run on the parkway?
Can you people can run the parkway?
Yeah. So maybe they go across the street.
Capitol Trail.
Yeah, well, there's
Yeah.
proximity to the Capitol Trail
Yeah.
there, and that's a popular location for races.
The Capitol Trail, the trail runs along Green Springs up past Mainland Farm. Then it cuts over behind
Jamestown High School.
Jamestown High and Fernbrook, and it comes in up there.
You would have to cross. You would have to cross over.
Right here.
Either there
Yeah.
or where the new thing is to catch it, but you'd still have to cross the road.
Yeah, but then that would take, if you were on foot, you would not be on Green Springs Road itself.
No.
Now, one of the problems we have apparently with the bicycles are on Green Springs Road.
They are.
And that is where we get the blockage of these communities who have only one way in and out.
Yep.
So that's, it's those are factors I think need to be really well vetted in the public process as we're looking at this.
One of the,
They have 2 ways out, but they're both being utilized
And
by the races.
By races.
So you really have no way
No way
out.
out.
if we could get the races to pull over to the parkway, they can go across, go behind, get right on the parkway, and
Yeah.
utilize the parkway. That keeps them right off the road.
But I think they do something at Chickahominy. Am I wrong here? Something at Chickahominy, and then they make their way back over to this area. A lot of the races that we
There's a couple different
have.
races.
Yeah.
Check out how many hosts, Ironman,
Uh-huh.
which rides the bikes over the bridge and swims in the river right there. I'm not sure what their running route is for
Yeah.
that one.
So I just think that we've got to be, because, and I don't want to be negative, because it is great, but I think it's not just that easy to say go on the trail, because our citizens love that trail. So now they're going to get pushed out. It's like wherever way they go, they're getting pushed. So we've just got to talk about this. It's a good thing, but
Right.
we got to all cooperate to make it work. So
One of the parts of the Running Center is outdoor restrooms that are attached to the building that will lock and close every day. So this would be providing restrooms and parking for people accessing the trail, though, which we're missing.
Yeah.
So that'd be a nice additive for our users.
The trailer on mainland.
yeah, there you go.
John, like, don't touch my phone.
Thank you.
All right.
Any
you
comments
can't go
on
over that.
this part? Any questions or any other?
Any further questions?
No, I think it's very good.
So, after this meeting, based on the feedback that you've given us, we'll make some adjustments to the maps tonight, and we'll start the public input process. We'll get some stuff up online. I think we're proposing to do a public comment period from the website. People can look at it and do electronic comments we can retrieve. And we're also proposing to host a minimum of 2 meetings, a daytime and a nighttime meeting, to get people to come out and look at the maps and give us their opinions.
Great.
From there, we'll do the formal approval process, which will take it through the Parks Recreation Advisory Commission first, and the Planning Commission, and it'll come to you for the final approval.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
all for work.
Great job.
Yes.
Looks like you're.
And thank you for the maps that I can read.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like. Did were these done in house
I
this
did
time?
the house with our.
And you did a very good job.
Pass it along to mapping.
Yeah, I mean, and probably cost a heck of a lot less than these did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good job, all around.
Alrighty, our last item for the evening is the Workforce Housing Task Force findings and recommendations. And Mr. Hall.
Good evening. Yes, good evening.
I know.
Thank you for your patience out there. So we get to.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again, good evening. Rebecca and I are going to tag team this presentation, so I'll get things kicked off. So really with a brief overview about where we've been and where the Workforce Housing Task Force last left this conversation with you back in January. Consistent with the goals of the county strategic plan and following a 13-month-long citizen-driven process that brought together representatives from a broad spectrum of the community, task force focused on developing recommendations that will provide housing to ensure that we can attract and retain workers and continue to grow our local economy. They define this as being housing of all types that are affordable to households in the workforce, with an emphasis on working households making between 30 and 100% of area and median income. And after reviewing a lot of data, they found that this is where the needs are the greatest. A few of the reasons why the affordable housing component is so important to the community were noted in the final report. I won't go back through those. Along with their vision statement, their vision statement was that the county continues to be a diverse community offering a high quality of life, consisting of quality affordable housing options and a safe, well-maintained, and inclusive neighborhoods. Also, along with several adopted principles, again, all these slides were in your agenda packet, so I won't go back through and read those. As were some of these other slides like this one that provided some of the summary report findings and their recommendations. Again, all of this was shared back with you back in January. You will recall, though, that the recommendations of the task force fell into 4 categories. Those were housing preservation strategies to rehabilitate, restore, and preserve the housing that we already have. Housing production strategies to facilitate and promote private sector solutions with new construction. Housing access, that category C there, those are the things that can connect up workers with affordable housing opportunities. And funding. Funding we won't talk about today. Those are the types of things that the board typically discusses during their budget development and deliberations. You may recall that the overall approach of the task force was to develop a toolkit of potential strategies, recognizing that some of the recommendations may be more feasible than others. that some may be more achievable in the short term, while others are going to take a while, and that some can potentially be done with existing resources, while some may take significant new resources from the county. And again, that's why we're back with you today. Rebecca.
Yes. So in your packet, you will have an analysis that we did of all of the recommendations. So we took all of the priority, the additional recommendations, and we combed through them. We had the technical advisory committee, which was staff, with the addition of a rep from the schools and a rep from WADA. And we went through, we had several smaller work group meetings, and we went through each one and we said, how feasible is it? What are the resources that we need if we need resources? And then what is the timeline? So that was kind of the overarching overlay we did on all of these. So you have in your packet, like I said, the analysis of all of them. What we've pulled out here today are the ones that we feel we could go ahead and do that don't require additional staffing or resources. A lot of these are to do more research, to establish a priority, assess opportunities. So again, things that we kind of do every day as staff, we analyze things, and then where do we need to go from here? So as far as these recommendations, like I said, we pulled out for the slides, ones that don't need resources. We're happy to go through them. We're happy to have you guys, ask questions about particular ones. The ones that do require resources that we feel are highly feasible, you may see again in the budget process if we want to have some additional resources that we say we can do this now if we just had a little bit more. And we feel like it's kind of a way to bite off a chunk of the apple. So you'll see some of these here, starting with the preservation, the rehab opportunities that we have that we've already gotten, that we're continuing to pursue and do. We really want to make sure that we can have folks stay in their homes when it's appropriate to do so, not disrupt them. The manufactured mobile homes, I know that's a big conversation. Assessing the opportunities to improve them certainly doesn't take any additional resources, but going from there, might take some. So that's what you'll see. So go to the next one.
Yeah. So again, we're not going to go through all of these. They're really there to the degree that you all want to use them as part of the discussion. Again, if there are any ones where you want us to particularly start with, we're just looking for that continuation of the conversation from earlier this year. Gives us a place to start. Again, this really continues to set the stage for the budget season that will be fast upon us. Now we've given you a lot of information today. That was really our homework. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily to go through all of this today. Our homework from that January meeting and from that task force final report was to bring this information back to you all. So again, we're here to take questions, give you more information. Did not want to leave the conversation today before I was ended on a good note, and really summarize some of the accomplishments that we've gotten done since February, because the team's really good about just not doing a study or an analysis and putting it up on the shelf. We'd like to go out and leverage money for sure. So by way of that, as you may remember, we were awarded $350,000 from the state's Department of Housing and Community Development earlier, and we've wrapped up rehabilitating 10 single-family homes that were owned by currently low-income residents. That work's concluded. We hope to continue that work and then some with the newly announced $1 million community development block grant that will go to support our scattered site housing rehabilitation initiative. We're going to kick that off with the state tomorrow, actually. We're very excited to get that going. The goal there is to get 16 homes rehabilitated through the state. As you recall from your last board meeting, and look at that fine group of people. Very distinguished group of people. We had
distinguished might be pushing
the board's support to pursue 2 additional funding opportunities to try and address some failing septic tanks and to try to get at a couple of blighted structures. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, more excitedly, back on September 7th, one of the task force priority recommendations was to hold what we hope to be is an annual rehab blitz with the Habitat for Humanity, and we were able to, by a lot of measures, successfully pull that off back on September 7th. So with that, that concludes our presentation. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I've got a couple of quick things.
Go right ahead.
One is, and I'll just, this is something I asked for a couple of times. I really do think we have to think about affordable housing on a regional basis in the Williamsburg region, and I'm still looking for some kind of indication of how well we as a region are meeting the needs, and to what extent there are opportunities for us to work with either Williamsburg or York County in trying to provide some additional opportunities. I think that there's, for instance, in the James Terrace area, an opportunity along Government Road, perhaps, where James City and York County come together to think about approaching some kind of community development funding from state or national sources if it ever becomes available.
Sure.
But just to be prepared for something like that. I also just want to highlight a couple of what I think are real tensions that we need to be aware of. There's some emphasis in the recommendations on accessory apartments in housing. And I always worry when we wind up in a situation where we're kind of inviting a conflict with covenants, where neighborhoods may prohibit something that might be seen as desirable in other instances. And I know our county attorney always tells us that covenants are private arrangements and we shouldn't, but I think it's a mistake for us to create a circumstance where we run into that kind of problem. It's also a big concern to me that one of the places where I see pressure or some interest in developing accessory apartments is for speculation as opposed to residence. There are places where there are modestly priced homes that would serve a family well, but may be purchased by somebody who has the intent of renting and dividing up into apartments, maybe for, that undermine the stability of that neighborhood as an affordable neighborhood for families. So and again, it's not a all right or all wrong kind of thing, but there's a tension there that I worry about a little bit. And in the same way, we've just seen a little trickle now, but I'm expecting that trickle may start to grow of requests for tourist homes and the like. And when we get those requests, then we're potentially taking a home off the market for residential development. So I think we need to be mindful of that as we develop any new regulations about short-term rentals, about Airbnb type situations and so forth. Just kind of, again, there's a tension there because, on the one hand, maybe having Airbnb allows somebody to own a home that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. But on the other hand, it may, again, be taking a house off the market and competing with other lodging options that are available in the community. Just a few things. I do think that one of the biggest challenges that is identified in the study, but one of the most exciting ones is the question of whether there's enough energy in the community to potentially try to acquire a manufactured home or trailer park and convert it into safer, more stable housing that might provide an opportunity to buy into it eventually, to have ownership of that land. And it would really require cooperation between local government, nonprofits, some of our financial institutions, and those service industries that employ a lot of the people who are in need of that level of housing.
And I think Habitat's already reached out to y'all a little bit. Yeah, that's what they're in.
That little trailer park.
Yep, yeah. Taking that trailer park and turning it into homes, and there's a lot of little lots that we can connect up to that as well to make that a community, and even with the what Craig has designed, some of the smaller, thinner houses to fit on some of those lots. And I think that would be a home run for us to try to, if we could, it'd fall right into what you're looking for, and partner with Habitat for Humanity and say, okay, we can get this project in there. We've got to have this or that or the other, and to look at playground sites and egress, ingress. And I looked at what the map that they put together, and I think that's something that would fit good in that neighborhood and give houses to the neighbors down there the ability to buy a house. Now, whether we can, if we do a neighborhood that's affordable, you still got the open market that somebody's going to have to come in and possibly buy something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's something that necessarily we ought to prevent, but how do we encourage trying to fill that? Maybe we do 2 or 3 of them until we flood the market enough to stop that. But there'll always be somebody trying to make $1 on something.
Mm-hmm.
Our job, I think, is more of trying to get, we're trying to protect on that, but trying to get enough out there so that the people that need it can get to it. So
Yeah. So your public lands, identifying which public lands might be possible. We probably haven't started that yet. And I do worry or wonder, do we have anything that we could possibly look at developing? And I'm not opposed to the accessory. I think that does fill a need, though John is spot on. We often get caught in the crosshairs between, people don't understand that we don't have a control over it. We have something we have to follow, and the HOA is a separate entity, even though Adam reminds us all the time. But it is a tough road to walk. So I think there's a lot of things in here that are definitely worth. I'm glad to see them, and the mobile home area too, I think, is important. So and seeing what we can do on areas that are already kind of set up for realizing some rehab is needed, but may not be as huge. And could be tackled sooner rather than later. I mean, how are you all? Do you feel, since the task force, that there's some progress that's going to be able to be made? And I mean, we've obviously made some progress, but some continued progress. And
I think so. I mean, I think what it's shown us is that there is the appetite to do something, and I think this analysis process was good for us. I mean, I think we have neighborhood development and our housing unit. And I think seeing us come together and kind of say, okay, you take this, I'll take this. And, we pulled back in a couple of members of the task force to be on these subcommittees so that we really kind of kept the momentum going. So I think that process has really worked well. I think it's where do we focus on so that we can make some gains without jumping too far to the end. So, we're being mindful for a purpose. I think kind of taking the time to really educate people about what we mean by this. And so when you have people who are concerned and saying, okay, well, don't assume this, let's really educate that. I think navigating people through the process of housing is something we really want to start to do. There might be some regional opportunities for us to take the lead on that. Because I think it's scary, it's confusing, it's overwhelming, especially for first-time home buyers or for people who are newly out of college and our 20s, don't know what to do. So how can we say, okay, we'll walk you through that process?
Yeah.
Whether it's renting or owning or whatever.
I do think you're right in that we're going to have to take the lead, because I do think we're far ahead. I don't know about York, but I think, Williamsburg is starting, but they're not where we are yet as far as, task force and all of that. So, and I don't know where York is on this either. So
that might be a question for Bob Crum. Regionally, what's being done?
Yeah,
it might be. The region is such a big thing to try to bite and chew off, and I think Bob has some resources in it. But the board brings up a good point. We're a little bit far ahead in this. It could provide some opportunities. Take one of the easy solutions, sort of the housing navigation piece. How do we connect up resources with potential buyers, with programs with first-time home buyers? It could be a very feasible thing. Could be we could start that here in the county. That could then sort of be something that we could replicate or add on to include Williamsburg and Upper York County, include the other parts of the historic triangle. I mean, that's something that's very, very easy to kind of get going here, build that momentum, much like we've done with some of these projects since February. Show those early successes, and then it's easy to build upon that.
I think it's very important, because one of the questions I had from some of the members was their concern that this study is all put in a notebook and set up on the shelf. And I think that and that's a valid concern, because it's a tough issue. You're not going to solve this overnight. But I think the fact that you can incrementally prioritize things and start taking a bite at it is very helpful. I would suggest that maybe what we try to do is take your little rack order here and give us a periodic update of what we're doing, and maybe the next round comes when we go into the budget cycle. Okay, here are the things from the plan that we're going to try to work on in the budget cycle. Here are the things we can work on next year, so that we have an ongoing idea. Now, one thing that I got to tell you that affordable housing. John and I have had this discussion before about how do you keep a house affordable, especially if it's in the for sale market. And we have a better option in some of the rentals than we do in for sale. But getting creative on how we keep these things affordable is one of the big challenges for us that I think we've got to face going forward. I know the city of Williamsburg has converted several motels, and I have one in my district that I was brought up. It's on Airport Road, right there at Richmond Road.
Well, you mean a private owner has...
Private owner, yeah, private owner. And the private owner came forward with a proposal to change it to apartments. The problem is that it runs afoul of our zoning, because it's not what he's proposing is not a use that we already have in our things. And if we do go to that kind of a use or a district, then the density is too high, and the bureaucracy is there with all the impediments to keep anything from happening. But if you take a look at it, the reality is that place is occupied by people who don't have any place else to go. And it gets fairly run down. And it's one of those things where anything we could do to help the owner or the people who live there have a better quality existence, because that's not really going to be a viable motel. No. It's essentially a place that doesn't fit right now. How do we make it fit and work on it to make it functional or usable for our citizens? So, and that's just one example. I'm sure there are others in the county, but
that's an example of kind of breaking the cycle.
Exactly.
And kind of saying, okay, we could go along like this. I had to explain that and another motel to my 9-year-old as to why it was like that, and kind of saying, it gets in this pattern of the residents who can afford to live there, and then the upkeep, and then you got to break it, decide to move on. If you
this is something where I think some creative brainstorming on the part of staff to come back to the board and tell us some recommendations or ideas on how we could make something like that work, and how we could make it productive and useful for our citizens. Sometimes we hide behind the bureaucracy, but this is a case where we need to make the bureaucracy work for the citizens in this case. So.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Creative solutions.
Okay. Anybody else got comments or questions?
No.
Thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
And sorry we kept you here so long.
No. We appreciate the time. I think this is a tough issue to tackle, and I think we definitely have a good start. And the fact that we want to tackle it is a big part of it.
Yeah. Can you stay after just a few minutes? I want to go over about some lady I'm going to talk to you about.
Okay. All right. We are down to board requests and directives.
I'm good.
I would just say last week was very busy. I attended the Tourism Council and the Business Council. We had a school liaison meeting. As you know, we now have a joint meeting for December on our calendars, I believe December 3rd. And then we all received a letter today about leftover fund money that was sent. And then I appreciate just great presentations tonight, and appreciate that very much, and the amount of information that was shared. I think that's very important. And I appreciate the way that the 911 center, how it was approached. And I know that people weren't happy, and they were calling, members of the board. And I think anytime you're worried about your job, it's a very emotional thing. But it's also important sometimes to let processes work themselves out, because they often do. And but I do appreciate the work that went into that. And just a couple of comments somewhat related to the Workforce Housing Task Force. Just a reminder for us as a board that it's important that we keep looking for employers to come in that will pay a living wage. So, this is a very expensive place to live. I get it, but it's also important that that we do our part and hopefully get people in here that will help pay our citizens what they need to. And as I shared with you all last week in an email, my absolute drives me crazy to see people who have worked. I appreciate that they've got a bus, but when they come out of a probably not much more than a minimum wage job, and they've got nowhere to sit waiting for that bus, whether it's a 100-degree day or a 25-degree day, and they're standing there. And I know that there's lots of reasons for that, but to me, that's just a small thing. If we could start by getting some shelter and some benches for hardworking people, and not just hardworking people, but the day I was just so incensed when I came back out, there was an elderly gentleman with a walker that was standing on the side of the road after going to the grocery store, trying to balance his groceries, waiting for the bus. So anyway, hope we can do better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a couple of quick things. Ms. Larson and I went to the Peninsula Food Bank on
thank you.
Friday last week for elected officials day, and packed a lot of lunch bags and broke down lots of boxes and so forth.
Right. It was, we did 1,900 bags, which was over 4,000 meals, and many of the food, the bags were coming up here for students in WJCC. So, yeah.
And also, I know that members of the school board have been encouraging us to come and visit with them to various schools. I went to visit Clara Bird Baker with Councilman Zhang from the city, and Lisa Ownby, the chair of the school board, and Kira Cook. And we had a very productive visit there. Got to see a lot of the great programs that are going on at Clara Bird. Got to see 6 classrooms of Bright Beginnings. Got to see a lot of other space needs that existed in school, and so forth. And also last night I attended a reception for the ARC, which received a grant, a check for $50,000 from Bank of America to support their programs. And they've also recently gotten a number of buses that are designed to get their clients to their places of work in the community. And a number of local employers are going out of their way to make sure that they provide opportunities for employment for clients at the ARC. And it's just very nice to see that. And congratulate the organization and our own Adam Kinsman, who serves on their board.
Yes.
The only thing I have is I wanted to bring to the board's attention. I'm going to be bringing something forward to you for your consideration. It has to do with retaining walls. And it started in Newtown when I had a constituent call and say, well, you've got a problem with these BMPs and the big retaining walls over there. And I had remembered it vaguely from walking it, but I went back over, and within about 30 or 40 feet of residential buildings and sidewalks, there are BMPs that have a drop of 40 to 50 feet of retaining walls. And there were places where the fences have been broken on the top by trees and growth and everything. So we are working with trying to get some of that remedied. But then I saw another one from JCSA, which you may have heard about. I think it's out in Colonial Heritage, where they have a huge BMP retaining wall that actually has some cables for stabilization that impact the JCSA right of way or easement. And so what I wanted to do is apparently there's no restriction. The developer comes in and he wants to do this, and it's you can terraform, you can create flat land, you can build these walls. The problem comes 20, 30 years later when the homeowners association has responsibility for it, or there are failures or issues like this. So I'm looking at trying to see if we can come up with some sort of ordinance that would say, if you have a retaining wall planned beyond a certain height, I think we had talked about 12 feet or something, that was within 150 feet of residence or a walking path, that it would require, we'd have to come to the board. It wouldn't be an automatic type of thing. Because if you go out and take a look at some of these things, I would not want my kids playing around anywhere near that. That's could be a lethal combination. So I think that's something that I would like to have us take a look at. But I wanted to give you all a heads up. Adam has drafted some language. I want to have him research a little bit more about how many of these we have and how big tall they are and where they are in the county, so we have a complete package to give everybody.
I know I have some.
Yeah.
There's some big ones.
Yeah, some big ones.
And the thing about it is, if they're done properly, they're supposed to be compacted every 8-inch lift. So they're not supposed to be filled. Every 8 inch is supposed to be compacted, and the X is supposed to be tested, and for the engineer. So
yeah. Well, this is one of those where I think the risk is high enough that it deserves, in my mind, a little extra level of scrutiny when we allow these things to be built. So that was all I had, and we are down to.
Just real quick, I forgot this. This is for y'all to look at and all that, and we'll talk about it and what y'all want to do, and we can do it privately or whatever. But I want to leave this. I'll probably leave with the county administrator, and that's all their information in there and all that. And then y'all can view it as you want in order to possibly name it a bridge.
Okay.
But that'll be up to the board to decide what, when, where, how, or if.
Okay.
But just for consideration. Thank you.
And I would ask Mr. Stevens if he has anything to add.
No, sir.
Okay. All right. We are to the point where I'll ask for a motion to adjourn until 5 p.m. on October the 8th for a regular meeting.
Motion.
We have a motion.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We are adjourned.